Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
Today, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a sweeping victory to American business and an equally sweeping defeat to American workers. The court gave the green light to employers who want to bar their workers from bringing class action suits in court as a condition of employment. The vote was 5-4. NPR legal affairs correspondent Nina Totenberg reports.
The conservative majority upheld and extended the growing practice adopted by American businesses, namely requiring workers to agree as a condition of employment not to go to court over wage and hour disputes, but to instead submit their claims to binding arbitration individually. Today, the justices added that employers may bar class action suits in court as well. Employment lawyers were elated. Lawyer Ron Chapman, who represents management and labor management disputes, said he expects small and large businesses alike to immediately move to impose these binding arbitration contracts in order to eliminate the fear of costly class action verdicts from juries.
It gives employers the green light to eliminate their single largest employment law risk with the stroke of a pen.
Many workers don't even know that they've waived their rights to go to court as a condition of employment. Indeed, the lead plaintiff in the case was an IT worker at Epic, the giant healthcare software development company. He got an email notifying all employees that they would be barred from joining any workplace class action lawsuit. By clicking that they received the notice, it turned out he was agreeing to the contract as a condition of continued employment. The Epic workers, as well as junior accountants at Ernst & Young and employees at a Murphy Oil gas station, went to the National Labor Relations Board contending that such class action bans were a violation of federal law. That law guarantees the rights of workers to engage in activities for the purpose of collective bargaining or any other concerted activities. The NLRB agreed with the workers in 2014, as did the Obama administration Justice Department, but the Trump administration reversed that decision and sided with the employers when the case was argued in the Supreme Court. Today, Trump appointee Neil Gorsuch, writing for the court majority, said that provision of the 1935 Labor Act that the workers rested their case on is clearly trumped by the Federal Arbitration Act that was enacted 10 years earlier. He said that Congress never intended a provision aimed at collective bargaining in the union context to guarantee workers the right to bring class actions in court. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in a rare oral dissent from the bench, called out the majority for what she said was an egregiously wrong decision. The court endorses nothing more than an arm-twisted take-it-or-leave-it agreement forced upon employees, she said. She noted that the workers' claims are usually small. Indeed, she noted that the typical Ernst & Young employee would likely have to spend $200,000 to recover only $1,800 in overtime pay. For this reason, she said, relatively few workers avail themselves of the arbitration option, and many are fearful of retaliation. The inevitable result of today's decision, she added, will be huge under-enforcement of federal and state laws designed to advance the well-being of vulnerable workers. It's up to Congress, she said, to correct the court's action now. Labor law experts said today's decision likely will present increasing problems for the Me Too movement and for other civil rights class actions claiming discrimination based on race, gender, and religion. There's no transparency in most binding arbitration agreements, and they often include non-disclosure provisions. Yale law professor Judith Resnick observes that today's decision applies to all manner of class actions.
What this says is that when you buy something, use something, or work for someone, that entity can require you to waive your rights to use public courts.
Cornell labor law professor Angela Cornell expects the number of these litigation waivers to skyrocket now.
What we see is the privatization of our justice system.
Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
When you have issues of race that come up in those instances, it is very important that there is a policy and a procedure in place to deal with them.
A Detroit firefighter reports a colleague's racist remark to higher-ups, but things didn't turn out the way the whistleblower expected. A remark made as the firefighters were watching TV left one of them upset.
But when he reported it, he felt that he was the one who got punished instead. Fox 2's Randy Wembley explains.
The situation is being investigated, but there are a lot of concerns about how it was handled. From the people in the room who pretended not to hear the remark but did, to the fire chief who waited a week to make his statements about the incident.
If we make a complaint, we should not be punished as if, we did something wrong because we spoke up about something that was improper.
But it seems that's exactly what happened to Eric Anderson, a black Detroit firefighter at Engine 50 on the city's east side. He and a few co-workers, all white, were watching news coverage of the Bill Cosby rape retrial back in April, when one of the firefighters made a blatantly racist remark about a black woman condemning Cosby.
He used the word black and
Retired Battalion Chief Tracy Thomas.
When he made the statement, the whole room got silent. They want to know, what is he going to do now? How is he going to respond to that? And he responded like I expected him to, and I'm glad he did by, oh really, and walking out of the room.
Anderson also reported the firefighter who made the racist remark. The administration removed the firefighter in question from Engine 50, but sources tell Fox 2 Anderson was also shipped out against his will to Engine 40, upending his family schedule, causing him to miss out on anticipated overtime pay and vacation time.
If you have workplace violence on that particular job, workplace violence, until it's properly investigated, both members are dispersed from that particular station. You go somewhere, so they won't be by each other until they finish investigating. It wasn't workplace violence. He simply made a complaint, and he was shipped out as if it was like workplace violence.
Fire Commissioner Eric Jones says Anderson requested to leave Engine 50 and take on a new position downtown. But Thomas and other sources familiar with the situation say that only happened after Anderson was removed from Engine 50 and after a new opportunity opened up with the apparatus division in Eastern Market.
Is there a whistleblower policy? And a whistleblower policy is something that every organization, every corporation, every institution should have in place such that when someone makes a complaint, they are not retaliated against.
We talked with Yarlin Daniels, a racial equity consultant and founder of Harriet Speaks. She says organizations have to protect people who speak up about racism while providing due process and not discarding those accused of it.
There has to be some type of reconciliation, mediation process to deal with these things. Because I'll tell you what, if we continue the habit of every time there is an instance removing someone or firing them, all we're going to do is push these things under the surface.
We reached out to the fire union about the situation. The president offered this statement. The union continues to monitor the administration's investigation and/or process of mitigating this matter. Our DFFA members are proud of and embrace the diversity shared fraternally on America's busiest fire EMS department. I'm Randy Wembley, and this is The Edge.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
NFL team owners today unanimously approved a new policy. In essence, it is not okay for National Football League players to kneel during the national anthem before games. If they don't want to stand, they can stay in their locker rooms. NPR sports correspondent Tom Goldman joins us now. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Ari.
Tell us more about what this new policy says.
I'm going to give you the official NFL language, okay? All team and league personnel on the field shall stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. A club will be fined by the league if its personnel are on the field and do not stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Now, this idea of respect is being questioned. Who exactly determines what respect looks like? Could standing but raising a fist or linking arms, as many players did last season, could that be respectful? Now, at least one owner, Art Rooney of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was quoted as saying those actions would be considered disrespectful. The new policy is not a blanket order that every player has to be on the field and standing for the national anthem. As you mentioned, players who don't want to stand can stay in the locker room or, say, a stadium tunnel until after the anthem has finished playing.
So as we said, this was unanimous by the team owners, but beyond that circle, it's kind of controversial. What has the reaction been?
It is. Players' Union is not happy. The union says owners took the vote without consulting them, and the union says it's ready to challenge the decision. Among the players' reaction, particularly interesting to note the reactions by Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reid. Kaepernick, of course, was the first to protest back in 2016. He took a knee to draw attention to issues of social inequality and police treatment of minorities. Eric Reid was his then teammate on the San Francisco 49ers and the first player to join Kaepernick in the protests. Both men are free agents and haven't been signed by any teams. They are suing NFL owners for alleged collusion, and today their response was simply to retweet a tweet by their attorney Mark Garagos, which posted an article on the new policy and the hashtag NFL collusion.
The owners approved this policy at their spring meeting in Atlanta. We're months away from the most intense part of the debate over the kneeling protest. So why is this happening now?
Well, it's not really out of the blue. As you mentioned, this issue has been raging since 2016 when Kaepernick first took a knee. Then last year, President Trump poured gasoline on the fire when he called protesting players SOBs, thoroughly politicizing the issue. And then last October, there was a meeting between players and owners about the protests. The New York Times obtained audio from that meeting, and it showed there's still a tremendous amount of angst about the issue. Some owners are really worried about the protests spilling into another season and causing even more upset among some fans and sponsors and advertisers.
And so just briefly, what do you think is going to happen when the season kicks off in September?
Well, the NFL would like this to have solved everything. The owners in Goodell say they hope the new policy helps return the focus to football. But you can envision different scenarios this season. What if a bunch of players take their protests into the locker rooms, then come out onto the field after the anthem? Will fans boo them? Will some players challenge the new rule and do something owners regard disrespectful during the anthem? So no, it doesn't appear today's announcement is the end, especially if the union mounts a challenge.
That's NPR sports correspondent Tom Goldman. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, May 24th, 2018. So I have been told. This is our weekly broadcast, Neutralizing Workplace Racism. The very first people to call in to the program, if we have any black listeners who have figured out these are the things to do on the job so that you are not maligned, accused of being aloof, too quiet, you don't speak up enough, you don't share ideas, you're not a team player, you don't fit in with our culture, you avoid all of those accusations, or that you molested a white woman. You get all of your bonuses, raises, on time, extra, in fact. You never have any difficulties with getting sick time, vacation time, personal days, emergency leave, never a problem. If you need to transfer to a different branch, no problem. You have a great office and are looking to kick back, put your feet up on your desk, and rake in the money for the next however long until you are ready to retire. You should be the very first person to call in to help explain how you did that so the rest of us can emulate your workplace success. If you're an entrepreneur, same thing. If being a black entrepreneur has helped you totally eradicate workplace racism, if you have white vendors or white clients, or white people that have to come and sign, whatever license you might have to have for your business operations, and you never have any issues, no problems, even if you have white employees, there's never, ever an issue. With racism, white supremacy, you got that conquered. You should be the very first person to dial in. The number 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Certainly, if you have any problems, concerns, if you just want to share an incident and get counter-racist perspective or suggestions on what you are dealing with to try to solve problems without creating new problems, certainly dial in. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. If you want to join the conversation, but you're not able to dial in with your phone, you can send an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. I can read your commentary on the air if you're having like a specific scenario that you'd like us to address, or if you just, have a counter-racist comment or suggestion on a scenario that has been discussed, you can email untiljustice@gmail.com, and I can share your commentary on the air. Before we get started, I did want to say about the C.O.W.S t-shirts. The counter-racist t-shirt, the one that I've been talking about each and every time that I go to yoga class, it did say, "Please respect me like I am a white person." The original thought was for the shirt to say, "Please treat me like I am a white person." So that's what the new version, that's what they will say. "Please treat me like I am a white person." I'm I'm unashamed to say I am gleeful about that. Mr. Fuller asks that we not request anybody respect us, and I don't think there will be any confusion with regards to what is meant by the word treat. So I'm ecstatic and looking forward to round 2 of the shirts. This is supposed to be an experiment to gauge how racists respond to the shirt, and non-white people, but I was primarily thinking of whites and their response to the shirt. But the orders for the shirts will be at the end of the month. The cost is $25 per shirt. That does include shipping and handling. You can email, and I think I gave out the incorrect email over the weekend, which is horrible, because that meant people had to email Gus about the shirts, which is exactly what was, we were trying to avoid. We'll try to clean that up as best we can. So, again, the most important thing about the shirts is do not email Gus T Renegade. Email cowsshirt@gmail.com. Added an extra S for the weekend. C.O.W.S, C-O-W-S, all caps, shirt, SHIRT, @gmail.com. cowsshirt@gmail.com. Trav, he will take excellent care of you. I think we had lots of folks who said that they were able to get their shirt quickly. We still had the shirts in stock, but making a different pressing. I would say go ahead and email him sooner than later, even if it's just to get information about, how many shirts you want and shirt sizes. That's important in going in to make another pressing. And he can give you all the details in terms of when you can expect the shirt to arrive. But just drop an email, cowsshirt@gmail.com. Trav will again take excellent care of you. Lots of folks have the shirt, and this is supposed to be an experiment. So once you have it, if you could, make a report on how people respond to you wearing the shirt, that would be super appreciated. Back to the regular focus of the broadcast. There was a lot with regards to workplace racism. The audio clips that you heard, the Supreme Court decision, making it more difficult for class action lawsuits for collective victims of racism to say, hey, we are being mistreated collectively. This is a wide pattern of incorrect behavior on the job to make it more difficult for that to happen, or to make it impossible for that to happen in certain work scenarios. The second scenario, the fire department. I don't know if retired firefighters here are listening or what have you, but every week it seems we got a new story with the firefighters and the fire department and their routine acts of terrorism against black people, whether it's fellow black firefighters or just black civilians. In that one, they beeped it out. And I try to put whatever they censor, I try to put it back in, but sometimes I fail. At times I fail. I really, really hate that because it can become unclear what's being said, right? So he said nigger. That was one when they were watching television. They were apparently watching some news report about Bill Cosby, and a firefighter, race soldier, felt compelled to invoke the word nigger and the word bitch when a black female, I guess, was giving her views or what have you on Mr. Cosby. And I thought that was super important because it wasn't just the individual race soldier who made those comments. It was the other whites. What do we talk about? Who has the greatest no snitch policy in the known universe? And they flex this real hard on the job. Whites. Hands down. But they demonstrated the no snitch and the Voltron effect right there. What happened? Who said something? Bill Cosby was going to get charged with what now? We're all going to take the fifth. Go get us a donut and wait for the next fire call. Standard tacky behavior at the fire department, no less. And that's another one we talk on the program during like the initial incident part of it, right? When he makes the comments. So important to keep your composure, regardless of how you handle the situation. If you get, if you just pull out your phone, if you tapped in time so you got that recorded, however you choose to respond, keep your composure. You cannot, be surprised about that sort of thing. And then you cannot allow that to have you riled up and emotional. And I can't, to have that sort of response. You're studying racism, white supremacy, counter racism, what it is, how it works. That is to help you so that you're not surprised, you're not stunned, you are able to manage your emotions dealing with a race soldier so that this situation will work out best for you. Very important. Final situation, I feel like that'll be something we can talk about on the compensatory call-in, although the NFL situation, that is absolutely 1,000% workplace racism, for sure. The only reason that I'm being brief with that is, as I said, we'll have time. I feel like that'll come up sometime over the weekend in the next few days. And there were other things. There were so many reports dealing with workplace racism this week. There was another report that just came out today. I would have substituted. I already had the sound clip made, and then this report came out, even though it came out early this morning, but I had the sound clip made last night. And I said, I don't want to change it. I would have taken that NFL clip out and played this instead because I think this is substantially more important. Workers are losing billions with a B, billions of dollars because of time theft. Maybe some of you are familiar with wage theft, not being paid for work that's on the clock. Well, what about when a scheduled lunch break at work never happens and you're an hourly worker who ends up working instead? Well, that is called time theft. And our colleagues, Stacey Vanek Smith and Cardiff Garcia from our Planet Money team bring us a story of Dawn, a nurse in Texas who specializes in postpartum care. I listened to this story. I didn't read it the first time. I think that Dawn is likely a black person. I could be incorrect. Continuing. Dawn is usually looking after around 7 or 8 new mothers and babies a day. When they need something or have a question, they call Dawn on a phone she keeps in the pocket of her scrubs, and there are a lot of questions. How do I do the birth certificate? When do I get to go home? When does the doctor come in? Between patient care and all the questions, Dawn says she doesn't have time for a lunch break on most days. Even if I get a 30-minute lunch, I still have a phone in my pocket and anybody can come searching for me. Dawn says her patients all take a survey at the end of their hospital stay. It is issued by Medicare and Medicaid, and if the survey scores aren't really high, there's a risk the hospital won't get reimbursed by the government. One of the questions they ask is, how quickly did your nurse respond to your pressing the call light or making a phone call? Dawn realized she was often working 90 minutes a week that she was not getting paid for. See, this definitely sounds like niggerized treatment. So Dawn headed up a class action lawsuit, and we just heard that Supreme Court decision, right? Class action lawsuit on behalf of the nurses in her hospital for time theft. She asked that we not use her last name or name the hospital where she works because the lawsuit is still going on. And so are a lot of lawsuits. Like this. Liz Tippett is an associate professor of law at the University of Oregon, right down the road, and she just completed a study where she looked at hundreds of cases of time theft. So I looked at court decisions involving lawsuits over the way that employers had set up their time-keeping systems. Liz cites a recent report from the Economic Policy Institute, which found that time theft violations for minimum wage workers, they stuff a lot of niggers in minimum wage jobs, totaled more than $15 billion a year. And the report found nearly a fifth of low-wage workers are experiencing a pretty extreme impact of time theft. The report said these workers were losing about a quarter of their weekly earnings to wage theft. The more I looked into this, the worse it looked. Do you think automation makes it worse? Yes. Really? Here's why. Let's say you had a sort of an older version of wage theft where someone tells you you just have to work off the clock. There are sort of social limits to that because when you tell someone you need to work off the clock, they know they're being asked to work on the clock and they might get fed up. But when one person presses a button once and it just shaves off time day after day after day, that's a scalable robot that can do it every day with great consistency. It's like evil spell check. What a metaphor. Liz Tippett says the situation could easily change. She thinks regulation should be put in place that would force employers to stop rounding, or that would force them to stop using software to create a situation where employees are pressured to say they took breaks that they didn't actually take. I would just pause there now when they say regulation. Now, given what just happened at the Supreme Court this week, now how likely do we think such regulation would be? Continuing, Dawn, the nurse in Texas, said she would love to see a solution at her hospital that would facilitate the nurses actually being able to take their breaks. I know some hospitals have implemented a partnership where you partner two nurses together and they basically take turns. I'm going to stop there. I'm stopping there because I think Mr. Fuller frequently says whites could solve the problem of white supremacy racism like immediately. This seems like a situation that could be solved without a whole lot of difficulty. I mean, she already presented. They have solutions. They know how this could be taken care of easily. Patients' needs still get met. Nurses still get their breaks. No problem. We don't have to cheat anyone out of their hours. They're waiting. We don't have to do any of that. That's not what they want to do. They want to practice white supremacy racism. Very important that that is understood in all areas. But I thought that was super important as well. We could have had many reports, as is the case most weeks, with regards to workplace racism. Once again, I know Scandal is done. You do have playoff basketball, and it is spring, so I mean, you could be frolicking outside. This is not an entertainment option. There are plenty in the system of white supremacy, diversions, distractions. This is a broadcast for participation. If you are a victim of white supremacy, if you have had a job, for sure, you are experiencing or did experience workplace racism, whether we recognize it or not. And even that, I think, is important sometimes, just recounting like, wow, these things were happening and I didn't even realize or recognize that this is racism, white supremacy that's happening to me. I just thought I was having a bad day at work or, whatever, however we process the situation originally. But I think that's super important, and sharing, just being able to observe different patterns with regards to things whites do to us in the workplace, because a lot of times you'll see tremendous consistency in their misconduct towards Black people. Extremely important. I think younger listeners that we have to the program benefit, and older listeners, myself included. But I definitely think younger listeners benefit from hearing from folks who have maybe a longer work history. So you have experienced, unfortunately, a bit more of the racist antics that go on. I think that can be very helpful for folks to get a better grasp of, what to expect, what to be on the lookout for, and already having a code in mind, like, oh, okay, if this sort of thing happens, I'll say this, I'll do this. Talked about that sexual unwanted touching, already having a code in mind for that, because that is so prevalent in the workplace and beyond. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. First few folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have commentary to share, lines should be open. Feel free to participate.
Hello, may I be heard?
Greetings, Red in Nevada.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. Hello, everyone. I guess I don't have too much to share this week. I definitely appreciate the clips, and I was actually reading about the Supreme Court's decision, and I think it might have been on BTR Community maybe, but I'm glad that clip, it actually explained a lot, because in the article that I was reading, it just kind of seemed like, oh, well, employers are kind of taking away a step, and I think they spoke about, in the article I read, it was dealing with employees at Kraft, but it actually made me think about a class action lawsuit that I was involved in, and I didn't even know I was involved in. It was for a plantation that I worked for not that long, but it was several years ago. And one of the things that I noticed, because I was just going through some of my old paperwork, was that it was basically to do with, of course, racism, where they weren't, some Black employees had filed a class action lawsuit saying that they were not getting their raises timely, and they were being passed over for promotions, just typical racism. But in the letter it said that they kind of based the settlement on maybe how long you worked, or your probability of even being eligible for advancement. And so they basically said, well, you know what, if it's less than like $100, then we're just not giving you anything. So I thought that was interesting, how like the lawyers kind of dictate, well, we'll send you a letter, but we used you for this class action lawsuit, but we're not going to give you anything for it. I mean, it wasn't, I wasn't expecting anything, but I just thought that was interesting, and that kind of made me think of that. And now, just with my current plantation, there's not too much to report. I have been making sure to stay on code as much as possible, and not trying to make it so obvious that I don't really, want to speak to white people. I actually, a white female, she was so happy about something, like the workload at the job. It was being, the workload was lightening up or whatever. It was being reduced, and I was just walking past her, and she kind of touched me on my arm, and she's like, look, we don't have to do that much. And so it's like, this is one of the people who, I really don't talk to. She kind of is one of those types who will take up too much of your time just by talking to herself, kind of bait you into a conversation, hi, how are you, and then just talk about herself. But I've been just making sure to, try to keep conversations as minimum as possible, and still kind of being polite, since I am on the job. And I guess that's all I'll share this week. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Outstanding. Appreciate that, Red. That is important. I think somehow that gets conveyed or misconstrued, that being codified is about being discourteous or aloof, like you just become mute. and don't say anything on the job. And I've said consistently that's not the goal. It seems that black people are frequently accused of being quiet on the job anyway, or not talking and that sort of thing. So being codified is certainly not about being quiet. You certainly want to remain courteous and not give the impression that I'm here to give everyone the cold shoulder, as they say. But you certainly got back to that time theft thing. Whites, they are insidious. They do it so many different ways. Delectable Negro Vincent Woodard, he talks about psychic energy and how whites, it just in a variety of ways, consume the energy, time, resources, intelligence of black people, and just being mindful about that, especially on the job. Like if they're just coming up to gab about them, say, right, well, got things to do, got to be moving, and keep it moving. I would even try and get better once I noticed that. Like if it took me, let's say 45 seconds to discard her once she got off on some nonsense, like I'm gonna see if I can trim that down to 30 seconds by the end of the week. Maybe I can get it down to 20 seconds next week. Like, she can get in one or two sentences, but once it's off on, we blanched carrots this weekend, and oh my goodness, a squirrel was that? Oh, okay, well, that is wonderful, Carol. I'm going to talk to you later, and keep it moving. Courteous, but staying on code. Other folks that we've not heard from at all, if you have commentary you want to share, line should be open. Proceed.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you, but your volume is very, very low.
Okay, what about now? Am I better?
That's a little bit better. If you could move closer to your mic, maybe that might help.
Hello, this is Helen from New York.
That's substantially better. Substantially better. Make sure you stay at that level and speak with a lot of black self-respect.
Okay. Hi, Gus. Hello, everybody. This is Helen from New York. Calling about a question from last week about evaluating your coworkers in front of people. I don't remember how long ago this happened, but when I was more confused, when I was asked to evaluate other coworkers, I did answer the question because I was a lot more confused back then. I was wondering.
Oh, are you still with us, Helen? Are you still there, Helen? Not able to hear you, Helen? Might have lost Helen. If you're able to hear me, Helen, we're not able to hear you at all. I'm not sure if it's an audio problem or if your line got disconnected, but we're not able to hear you at all, Helen. If you get the audio situation figured out, I'll let you know. If you want to hang up and dial back in, we can try that as well. I'll just look out for you on the switchboard. Other folks who dialed in while we're waiting to hear back from Helen, if you have a hand up, line should be open. Your volume is very low as well. If you can speak up.
Can I be heard?
I can hear you, but your volume is very low. I'm not sure if you're. Say again.
Can I be heard now?
Yes, Draftomania, I can hear you, but your volume still is pretty low. I'm not sure. You can turn your volume up or get closer to your receiver, or both maybe, and speak up.
Okay.
That's better.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, great. How are you, Gus, and the callers?
Right, poorly.
How are you doing today? Well, this is like an outside incident in front of my job. Right after I pitched public transportation. And yesterday, I noticed that this white man, as I'm standing on the bus, this white man,
It's your line has quite a bit of distortion in it. it's difficult to understand you. Like it's quite a bit of distortion. It's yeah, I'm having a difficult time hearing you. I'm not sure if you want to, same thing we said with the last call. If you want to try and see if you can get a little bit clearer. Are you using a headset?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Is it better or no? It's still kind of bad.
It's a little better. If you want to start over and try again, we'll see if that's better.
We'll have to. Is it better now, or maybe what I'll do? Maybe I'll call. I'll hang up and I'll call back.
Okay, that'll
Maybe
work
I'll
too.
get better reception at that time. Okay.
Okay. I'll look for you on the switchboard. Tech issues, technology. Other folks who dialed in, if other folks who dialed in with a hand up, while we're seeing if we can get better reception for some of our other folks who dialed in. If you have a hand up, a line should be open. Hopefully you'll have a clearer line.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you hear me very clearly?
Crystal.
All right, awesome. This is the software developer in Wisconsin. I just had a quick update to my call last week. Last week I called in and I said that some surveillance was increased by my lead architect after a conversation about betting and not joining in with my teammates or coworkers. Well, I was out of work on Friday. I was on vacation for something else. And when I got back on Monday, my desk had clearly been rifled through. So things were out of place. So I believe that they were going in my desk. Right now I'm very cautious. I think that they may be trying to fire me. I think that's my worst case scenario situation. So I'm preparing myself for that. It seems like they sort of intensified their scrutiny, but at the same time, they're being deceptive. They're smiling and everything else. So I'm just working on my LinkedIn and all this other stuff, and just hopefully I can get out of there and leave them worse than they were when I was there. I mean, before I came. So that's all I have today, and I'll mute my line. Thanks.
Wow. Our caller in Wisconsin, and on this program, I talked about the importance of words. I've said on workplace racism before about that possessive adjective. It's not my job. It's not my office. It's not my desk. Not my computer. I think that's very important, just mentally, for us to be mindful of that at all times, because they can at any time just come and say, yeah, this is our job, not yours, and you're not doing this job here anymore or any other job. They do that to us all the time. And same thing with the desk, the office. I've seen that too, where they come in and say, "Oh yeah, we're taking our desk. You're going to get this one now." They don't ask or anything else. So I think it's super important. And I think, when I've said consistently, don't leave any personal items. Don't, not even a bowl of candy, nothing in your desk, on your computer. Like, just think of that at all times, that as soon as you leave to go to the bathroom, they're going to be rifling through everything, going through your internet history and archives and any and everything that they possibly can. So just think that way at all times, and fine, no problem. Knock yourself out. You can go through it, get fingerprints, DNA samples, any and everything. Knock yourself out. Have fun, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Like, that's the way we should be thinking. Oh, did you have anything?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, there's nothing personal in my desk. There's nothing personal, or in the desk that I'm using. There's nothing personal in the computer that I'm using. I mean, they're obviously really looking for something, and they're not going to find it. But you can tell they're desperately looking for something. So I just grateful for, the cows, for Mr. Fuller, for, just that foresight of not even leaving anything personal at my desk. At the desk that I use. Not even one picture. Not even. I maybe had a pack of gum in there. I really, I can throw that away. Not a big deal. But yeah, that is very important. Not having anything that they can use against you is very important. That's why they're scrambling now. So thank you again. I'll mute my line.
Just being codified can just simple things that we can do to just be codified that I think would serve us well in the work capacity. And that sort of behavior, the surveillance, and with racists, sometimes they want you to know that they rifle through the desk just for that sense of anxiety, like, oh, we're watching you, nigger. We got our eye on you. We talked about that before, just to have us stressed. I think they do that to tons of black people on the job, just to have us stressed and worrying, am I going to be fired? Are they going to move my schedule? We heard that with the black firefighter. Are they going to move my schedule around so that I'm missing out on my overtime opportunities and messing up my scheduling with my family, attempted family? They do this sort of thing routinely. Edward Baptist, the half has never been told, just to, have us, they know the impact that has on health as well, when you tamper with someone's job on a regular basis, what they're using to support themselves. Other folks...
One more thing. I'm sorry, Gus. One more thing. So the reason why I think they're firing me, or at least trying to keep me in the position that I'm in, and I can't think of the word. I'm a little nervous. Not pay me accordingly. Is that the position that I was trying to get, the analyst position that I was trying to move into, they're hiring for that analyst position. And I was actually in a meeting, and my supervisor's computer was being shared on the big screen, and I saw an email pop up for hiring of a new analyst. So I thought that was interesting. Also, I just think that they're really looking for something. I just have a plan to sort of update my LinkedIn. I've also noticed that people have been looking anonymously at my LinkedIn again. I have a plan to update it at like 11:59 on Monday evening, so that they don't have enough time to strategize, between the time they see it and the time they see me on Tuesday, so I can get maybe a more honest response to it than they would normally do if I updated it on Friday, per se. So, okay, I'm done for real this time. Thank you.
Appreciate that, caller in Wisconsin. That having a strategy, that's just what I mean. Codification, you have a plan based on your understanding of what racism, white supremacy is, what it means to be classified as white, and how they are terrorizing, working against you on the job. You have a plan to neutralize that. That is having a code plan, and then you apply that plan in terms of all aspects of what it is you're trying to accomplish. Let's see, we got, I think Helen is back with us. We will see if we have a clear line. Do you want to try again, Helen?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me better now?
Substantially better. Market improvement.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties earlier. What I was saying is that I was asked before to evaluate coworkers, and hello everybody and the guests. I was asked to evaluate. You asked this question last week about having to evaluate coworkers in front of other people. So I've had that experience before a few times, and when I was less codified, I would answer the question. I was one of those type of people that would be like overly friendly, the job greeter at the job, thinking that's how you keep a job, on top of doing your best work. And I noticed after a while that doesn't work. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to be civil, stop being, overly friendly. And when I was overly friendly, I answered honestly. When I became codified, I just started like, when I was asked to evaluate other people, I would say, well, who? What? I would play dumb. But I didn't even see that as them practicing racism. I just thought that, the supervisor or whoever is just being lazy. Why don't they do their own job, and I'm not going to answer them. Now I'm learning that they were practicing racism when they were asking me that question, because I clearly wasn't qualified to, give that type of evaluation, and it's just going to cause drama at the job. I have other stuff, but I'll share later. Thank you for letting me share that.
For sure. Appreciate we talked about that just last week, and other folks having to experience that. And I think that's a lot of people just not understanding racism, white supremacy, and not understanding how just the simple things, simple ways that conflict can be generated in the workplace, and how that can be used to create more problems for you specifically. Just not understanding racism. Lots of us end up being in that position and just not knowing what to say, and end up saying the wrong thing that does not end up working out in our favor. Just having a code. And I'm reminded, even requesting time. If something happens like that and they ask you to, give an evaluation, sometimes you just have to say, wow, I'm going to have to think about that. Can I get a little more time to make an assessment? I was not prepared to make, a conclusion on that today at this very moment. And see, what they say there, because that can be important. Other folks that we have not heard from at all, if you have a hand up, if you have commentary. Oh, let's see. We can go 2 for 2. Let's see. Draftomania, was that Draftomania? Was that you?
Yes, Gus. Can you hear me better now?
Markedly better. 2 for 2.
Wonderful. Good evening, guests and Gus. What I was saying earlier is that this is an outside incident. It's happened outside of my job. I catch public transportation, and I've noticed yesterday. I noticed that it was this guy. We have a parking lot to our job, and people can easily just go and park their car inside of the parking lot. But I have to catch the what do you call it? It's like a little transportation bus that comes up that comes and picks me up in front of the job. So it's this white guy. He parks outside of the building where I'm at to catch the bus, and he sits there. And he parks his truck, and he's just staring at me. So I took notice of it. I'm you try to be aware of your surroundings and what's going on. So I'm like, wow, why is this guy just parked here and he's just staring at me? So I made note of it, and I kind of took note of it, and I just went ahead and I got on the bus. So I noticed today, the same guy, he's sitting there, he's like smoking a cigarette, but he's like very obviously he's just looking at me. So what I ended up doing is I went and I took pictures of his truck, and I took pictures of the license plate, because like I said, he made it very obvious is that he's just sitting there and he's looking at me. So we talk about the civilian's job and things that happen. So I just took pictures just to be codified, just in case anything happens or what have you, because I'm like wondering, why are you sitting right directly across from me and watching me? So it just made me pretty uncomfortable, and I was just wondering if you thought that was the right thing to do. I just walked up and I took pictures of the license plate of the truck.
Absolutely. I think that's prudent. I think that whites in a similar situation, particularly if it had been a black person just standing there looking, oh yeah, they demonstrate that all the time. They would have been already called 911 and reported. 3 or 4 white people might have reported them. But yeah, I think that sort of thing should be taken seriously. It reminded me of
absolutely
Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. I think a white woman saw him doing the same thing, basically lurking out in the parking lot before one of the explosions went off. But I mean, yeah, any sort of white person that's just there lurking, and particularly you're noticing this day after day, more than once, where this person is just out here loitering, as they say, for what? Why are you standing here? And why does it, it seems like your attention might be focused on me. Excellent job getting the photograph. I wouldn't care if he, saw you taking a photograph, letting them know that you're serious.
Oh, yeah, and I made sure he saw me. Beautiful. Because I took pictures of him also in the van. I made it very clear that I was taking pictures of him because he wanted me to he wanted. I felt as if he would made it very clear that he was staring at me and that he wanted me to feel uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable also. And I have pictures on my camera phone.
Great job. I don't know if they have security on your job or what have you, but you can report it since you have pictures and let them know, this guy's been loitering close to the parking area. I've seen him, several times, and I didn't feel comfortable. I don't know if he works here or not, but just sharing information on someone who looks suspicious close to the property. I don't know if y'all have, security or what have, or even you can still report. You can even report even if you don't have security. You can report it to human resources or a supervisor on the job. That's the sort of thing they should want to know. Employee safety, I would think, right?
Well, we don't have any security, as you stated, and because I work third shift. So when I get off of work, it's in the morning. So people are just coming in, but during the evening, there's nobody there. Actually, there's just absolutely nobody there. So I don't know, like. Actually, I don't know who I could tell, but I will take in some. I don't know how serious they're gonna take it, but I will make note of it. Maybe on Wednesday when I go back in, I'll tell the supervisor on that shift. I'll just let her know. I'll make her aware of it, and she gave me some good information about a application that you can put on your phone to surveil your neighborhood, to see what's going on in your neighborhood. It's a application that's called The Ring, and you can just see what kind of reports has been, what kind of crimes has been going on within your neighborhood and things like that. So she might be a little bit more open to listening to my situation as far as this guy and sitting out there just staring, obviously just staring at me in the van like that. So I'm not really sure who I could go to and who will listen to me, but like I said, I just felt, uncomfortable. He's just staring at me and, some strange white man just looking at me every day. So.
Yeah, I would, especially knowing more information that you're working the third shift and those odd hours and, leaving early in the morning. I don't know if it's still dark then or whatever, but with that, I would definitely, just as a safety concern, because I would think the people in management, supervisors, I would think that they would want employees who are working those hours, especially coming in late at night and leaving early in the morning, to feel safe on their way to and from their vehicle to get, to work. So I would definitely report it. I think most employers where there's any sort of baseline concern for safety, that would be something like, oh yeah, let us know about that if we need to get an escort, or at least even just to report it, to let people know, hey, if you see this guy, let us know. Have you had an incident? Have you seen this guy? Like that sort of thing, just to be proactive about that, I think is prudent. That's safe, particularly in this day and age. Like, yeah, I'd report and might even, have my photo work handy for because, he could be doing this to somebody else too,
Absolutely. Okay, well, I thank you for that. I have some other things I can share later on, but I just wanted to get that out because that just happened to me this morning, and I tried to stay codified and not get upset, but I also wanted to remain safe at the same time.
Absolutely. Always err on with anything that's safety, where you don't not just you, everybody that's listening to the broadcast, anything where it's a safety issue, where you think it could be some sort of physical violence, or you're just not feeling comfortable. Always err on the side of caution on that. Like, we're already under a system of white supremacy. Any sort of additional safety issues or concerns, like, man, we got enough to deal with already. Like, I would report it immediately. Context of White Supremacy, number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, commentary to share, or I guess if you have your own situation, or if you have suggestions for what's been shared thus far, lines should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, retired firefighter.
Greetings, everyone. I guess I'll say something about the fire department issue and NFL. Starting with the fire department, basically indirectly from the incident that you reported on, I'll say this. I started with Dade County Fire Department. I was 23 years old when I started. And I cannot think of any other employment that would advance a person on the subject of racism, white supremacy, more than being employed on anybody's fire department. Because you're going to be a victim of it just about in some way or fashion, directly or indirectly, just about every day that you show up for work. And as Mr. Clark would tell you and share with you, even when you're not on duty, you would have that experience. And it's basically, been through all of the history. And even before the technology, white firefighters have been intimately connected in this part of the world. I mean, only a phone call away. That's another experience that you can that you witnessed with Mr. Clark. You know, as far as on how the white firefighters all over the country knew about those militant figures with that flag within about maybe 2 or 3 hours or less. NFL issue with the symbolic counter-racist activity. I through my many years of coaching high school football, I've coached a lot of black males who played in the National Football League and are currently in the National Football League. And I would suggest I would not make any type of demands on what they should do. That would have to be left up to that person if they're going to do anything. What I've been hearing lately, even on some radio programs, unfortunately, non-white black people who are basically stating, "Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with them. Why they need to just do it anyway." You know, that type of thing like that. And from my experience on the job, I don't see too many non-white black people putting their employment at risk, you know, like they would demand it on other non-white black people on a job. So that's something that should be left up to that non-white person themselves. What else on the subject? Anyway, it'll be good if I can hear some of the others on the line suggestions on what the players, based on what the owners, quote unquote, which is another code word for white males, on what they are demanding, and what should be the move, if any, from the non-white black players. I would be interested in just hearing on what the thoughts would be from the listeners. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Retired firefighter. I'm sure folks will have plenty to say on that one as we proceed. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary you'd like to share, line should be open. Proceed.
Hi, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Napa Valley from California.
Greetings. Good to hear from you.
I think my comment on the football player thing, are you referring to the whole thing about, was it like fining the players for kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance?
Well, I think what retired firefighter was talking about. Yes, the new rule about the pledge or the national anthem. As I understood it, it was not the player that would be fined. It would be the team that the player who kneels or whatever disrespectful thing they do during the anthem, the team would get the fine, as I understand it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I just think that it's like, I feel that's really messed up and unfair. And it's kind of taking away the choice of the players, and I don't think that's right. So I definitely found the whole rule like pretty upsetting.
Right on. Watch that word fair. Is this your first time dialing into the program?
I think it's my second time.
Second time. Right on. Did you have any other commentary, workplace racism that you wanted to share, or you just wanted to comment on the NFL situation?
Yes, I do have my own commentary about workplace racism. Let's see. At least for me, recently, I've been teaming up with my friends. We're considering opening up a business together. And every now and then I send my best friend books, like self-help books. Recently I sent her a book called The 48 Laws of Power. And it's basically this book. I guess some people describe it as a Bible for psychopaths because of how like the rules are stated. It almost seems like kind of amoral, but actually you see these rules followed and enacted in like everyday life, in politics and like the workplace. So I sent this to my friend, and I guess like what kind of like threw me off was how like quickly she's like non-black, by the way. She non-white. She kind of quickly like wanted to share it with people and like print it out and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really find it totally appropriate because of the content of the book, and it's kind of like insider rules or like a dirty secret that people know but they don't talk about. So she shares it to this non-white male and like this white male, and basically the conversation goes, the white male like says that it's like really, the book is like really screwed up because they talk about rules such as taking credit for like things that you didn't do, which like really like it kind of like rings true. Like I remember when you guys were reading The Wisdom of Psychopaths on here, and that's something like a white people thing to do. But I almost felt like it was sharing like the insight or like with the enemy, even though if they already are kind of aware of this stuff. But I guess my question is how to kind of be codified on like discretion and like how I kind of share this information with others, because there's also like they keep on kind of playing off of like, oh, this is like what like white people do on like a regular basis and stuff like that. And I feel like it can generally be used in everyday situations. It doesn't just have to like apply to white people. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say.
I see. Okay. We were. That's a book that has been suggested for the book club. 48 Laws of Power. Consider it down the road. I would say, just number one, a big part of my codification for the job and just throughout the system of white supremacy. If there are not going to be any secrets, if you tell one other person, that is not a secret. And just assuming any bit of information, book, whatever it is, if I tell another person, I'm totally okay with, the entire world knowing, and just getting in that frame of mind that I'm not sharing information with this one person. If I'm telling one person, I'm telling everybody. And if I'm not comfortable with this information being shared, then maybe I need to reassess whether or not I'm going to tell this person, especially if this person, and watch the word fair, make sure I double emphasize, but especially if you know that this person might be a little bit more confused about racism. I mean, you didn't say that, they had white friends, but sounds like maybe, if they're sharing, books and can't wait to go talk with these other white folks, about, whatever new information they get. If you know that, then you already have to factor that in, with whatever you say to this person, or at least I think it would be prudent to factor that in beforehand, with whatever I say, whatever I share. It seems like this person is pretty chummy with whites, that they, might go share this information with other whites or even other non-white people. So, I factor that in before I share the book with them. And, if that could cause any problems, in how we move forward with the business endeavor, that would be my suggestion, to just keep all that in mind in how you move forward, and just keep in mind they're not going to be any secrets under the system of white supremacy. Any other suggestions from our callers, listeners, on how you would deal with that situation if you're in some sort of business arrangement or coworker and you share information with them and then they also share it with whites that are in the office, what have you? How would that alter what you share with them? Or would it alter what you share with them?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir, firefighter.
I would say if I share something with a non-white person with the intent to work against the system of racism, and somehow that white person got it. Is that basically the equation you were talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, the non-white person jumps to share it with the white person.
I would attempt to have a constructive conversation with the non-white person about doing that. Although the white person may already know about whatever is in that book anyway, but I would kind of like in a courteous way, the most courteous way possible, to basically state to that person that when I share some information, I'm sharing it with just yourself.
Okay.
Specifically, as far as that concerned.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I do think, or I wouldn't find it improbable with the centuries of terrorism in that sort of scenario, if some victims of white supremacy didn't find that odd. Like, wow, you don't like Tom? What's the problem? That's my guy. Like, you didn't want me to. It's great information. You don't want Tom to have great information? I could see that maybe even being something worthy of making a note of to share with others. Like, I don't know. Firefighter's a little strange. He told me not to share the book. I don't know. That it would not stun me if that happened in the system of racism, white supremacy.
Yeah.
Any other folks?
Can I be heard?
Oh, yes, sir.
I would just say, like I stated before, I don't think white people need our help.
Massive echo. How odd. I don't hear it anymore.
I'm actually driving, talking Bluetooth. I don't know. Maybe that caused the problem. I don't know for sure.
You're clear now.
But okay, yeah. As I think I mentioned before, that white people don't need our help anyway. So from that standpoint, and basically, I would kind of like, even before I gave it to the person, just to say to them that I'm doing this for you as a non-white. Talk specifics is what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting. Talk specifics. And I would say maybe the non-white person would get it. Because there is some logical reasoning on helpful information and how the victims of racism don't need to share helpful information with white people. They have access to it if it's something that's going to catapult themselves financially, and even counter-racist information. They know what's correct, logically speaking. They just make the choice not to do the correct thing. So, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Absolutely. Make the choice to do the incorrect thing. And that might be a good piece of counter-racist codification to add, that in the future, or for black people, like if you're thinking, hey, I want to maybe share a book, want to give them some Amos Wilson or Dr. Marimba Ani, if I give it to them, and in fact, we have had listeners, Kamisha M. Africa, we talked about that when she was a guest on the program, one of our investors. She said she gave a book, Constructive Information, written by a black author, to one of her black colleagues, and they turned around and took that book and used it as evidence that we have got a subversive Negro on the plantation and she should be fine. Like, you can go back and listen to the archives I hear you, Stacey. I will, yes ma'am, you're coming right up next, but just something to keep in mind. You can tell them, if it's a non-white person, this is between us, or however you would phrase it. But I do think that is important, because we have had a C.O.W.S listener, C.O.W.S investor, no less, who got into a lot of trouble around sharing controversial Negro literature with a black coworker. Stacey in the UK joining us live 2:17 a.m. Friday morning.
Hi, Gus.
Morning.
Can you hear me?
Well, yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
And hello to all the other callers. I was just going to agree, actually. I don't think it's probably the wisest move to share too much information with colleagues. And I couldn't hear properly whether she said she had emailed information or had given a copy or whatever, but I would be cautious as well about leaving an audit trail. So there's one thing to have a conversation with a coworker about any matters like that, but then I wouldn't send information by email, because even if you're not recorded by that person, emails just provide audit trails as evidence against you, should anybody want to undermine you in the future. I mean, the 48 Laws of Power isn't necessarily a book about race issues anyway. I guess it's more about business strategy and just rules for operating in life. I doubt very much whether there's anyone in the workplace that doesn't really know about that book, and certainly not suspected racists. But yeah, I would just be a bit cautious. I couldn't remember the name of the caller, whether it was Red in Nevada, who was concerned about being observed at work when she's entering the office earlier.
That was the female caller in Wisconsin.
Yeah. I was just going to suggest as well that she actually just notify the police. not just her employers. I think it is very important to notify her employers, regardless of whether they act or not, because frankly, she's travelling into work, and if it's happening near the entrance, especially to the workplace, then they should be notified. But I would also notify the police, and maybe just use her recording device as well when she is actually coming in and out of the building. Just not necessarily having her phone out and be visible, but whatever she's using, just to have a recording of when she's entering and leaving the building, just in case, just to be a bit cautious as well. But yeah, I wouldn't not act on that matter. I would notify people, and hopefully the fact that she's actually taken a picture might mean that he doesn't turn up again. And I've got a couple of other updates, but the last thing I'll say was, because somebody mentioned the question you asked last week about the feedback on employees, or colleagues, just to say there are a variety of ways in which managers deploy that little tactic. We had a team away day. It was a couple of years ago, and one of the sort of games, in inverted commas, we were asked to do was to basically get a sheet of a bit of paper, and I can't remember exactly how they did it, but say like it was a bit of paper, and for all your colleagues, you'd write one thing about them down and then put it in a tray or something with their name on it. So basically every single person in the team had a tray where all of their colleagues could write one comment about them, and it was supposed to be constructive feedback. Now I have a feeling, because nothing is unintentional, I'm sure it was an act of cowardice, but also an act of terrorism on the part of managers. So I don't know who specifically was being targeted that day, but it was a way of, I guess, my manager or head of team avoiding giving feedback to a particular individual that they found it difficult to deal with. And whether it was aimed at a white person or a non-white person, I don't know. I didn't feel I was particularly being targeted in that little event, but certainly nothing is done just as certainly that exercise wasn't being done as fun. And my head of team is quite cowardly in many ways at times, or very scheming. And it was interesting because obviously people give you feedback, and I got a variety of comments, including I think it's something like very proud, and another comment about wears nice shoes, and the comments just ranged from the sublime to the ridiculous. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't put anything down which was going to be controversial, and I was actually trying to be positive in the feedback. But yeah, it's just to say, I mean, that there's a variety of ways in which that little tool can be deployed, and I guess we should be mindful about the various different ways in which managers can try and use you to do what they don't want to do. I'll mute my line, guys.
Great point. From Stacy in the UK with nice shoes and excessive pride. And I got confused. You all have to forgive me. There's so many niggers being surveilled. Although our software developer in Wisconsin is also being surveilled. The person who was being surveilled with this race soldier just out in the parking lot, that was Draftomania, unless I'm in error again, but I think that was Draftomania. And contacting the police, I think that is a constructive way to go as well, especially since you got photographs and the vehicle and everything. That's what white people do. I think I said that earlier. That's exactly what whites do. We should do the same thing. Other folks who dialed in, if you have a hand up, if you have either your own situation that you want to share, or if you have commentary on what's been discussed thus far, line should be open. Proceed. Folks that we missed.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Helen again from New York. This is just a little experiment that I've been doing at the job. I'm civil to everybody. I greet everybody. I say hello, good morning, stuff like that. When it comes to males, I say sir. And what I've noticed in the last couple of months is that when I call non-white males sir, most of the time they correct me and they don't want to be called sir, no matter how old they are, no matter what position they're in. They could be executives, CEOs, property managers, whatever, and they all correct me. But when I call a white male sir, they never correct me. They could be 10, sometimes parents will bring their children in, so they'll be as young as like 9, 10 years old, and I'll say sir. They never correct me, 18, 19, 20, and up, and they never correct me. But the non-whites, they do correct me, and they don't want to be called sir. So that's just a little experiment that I've been doing at the job, calling everybody sir and paying attention to the non-whites who don't want to be called sir. Do you have any thoughts about that?
That's interesting. Do you do ma'am with the females?
Yes, I do.
Is it the same or?
When it comes to most women, like when they're over, what I've noticed is like when they're over, I guess about 50 or so, they don't have a problem with it. But the non-white females, when I call them ma'am, sometimes they catch a little bit of an attitude, but not too much. It's not like don't call me that. It's, I don't know, I guess it's an age thing or whatever, like, oh, I don't want to be considered that old, or I don't want to be looked at like your mom, so don't call me ma'am. But they don't really say, they just have a little bit of an attitude. But as far as the females, it's not really a problem. But the males, they speak on it and they correct me and they say, no, it's okay, you can call me John, or you can call me, the non-white males, they'll correct me and say, no, it's okay, you don't have to say sir.
I was going to ask the question. And I think the caller just answered it. I was going to ask, what do they give me some of the names of they would like to be called? And
yes, they do.
Well, I meant what do they tell you they would like to be called if they don't like sir?
They will say their first name, or they'll say their last name. But 100% of the time, most of the time, 98% of the time, they'll say, oh, you could just call me John, but call them by their first name.
Okay. Well, I mean, the code, which I believe is based on logic, it states to call the person by the name they would like to be called. So I guess that follows under that. But the reason why I was bringing it up, because I use that code also, and but normally what I get, even before I address someone as sir, they call me all kinds of different names, like boss, big man, I mean, which I really don't like, to tell you the truth, as far as they're concerned. But so I figure if someone is calling someone big dog, boss, that would be something that they would be all right with, which is not really all right with me to identify someone, in my mind, for obvious reasons, in those type of names. But interested.
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting. Yes.
Stacy in the UK.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, I would imagine there are variables to how people would respond to that. If and I guess you're talking specifically about the workplace. Perhaps the men would respond differently outside of work, but I would, my assessment of that is that they're probably it's the conditioning. And I think, Gus, you had a previous guest on the show. I think her name was Alison Manswell, and she was in the sort of HR, human resources profession, and she talked about how she would advise black males in the workplace, particularly to, I guess, sort of be more, I don't think she used the word effeminate, but basically, don't come across as too dominant in the workplace. And so I would imagine that it's a subconscious conditioning that, black males in particular probably feel like, they need to avoid being seen as the boss, even if they are in a sort of management role. And the reverse of that, I guess, particularly for women, is, that term ma'am can be taken in a variety of ways, including you are, I guess it's a bit like the word, being a black female being told they're sassy or something else, that it can just be perceived in a variety of ways. So I would imagine that you would get a slightly different response from females in general about that word, although I would imagine that there is a different reaction again between the way that black females respond and and white females respond. But interesting experiment. I'll mute my line, Gus.
Great memory, Allison.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Drapetomania. That just wanted to say that was Allison Manswell. She was on the program in 2016, and I believe now my memory could be off, but that was an important broadcast, and I think she did use the word effeminate or aderative, and I think she was reluctant to use the word. I almost want to say I remember that exchange because she said she felt like she was telling black males in order to be successful that they have to be effeminate. I think she used that word reluctantly, with regret that's basically what she felt like she was having to tell them about. Don't be too loud, don't be too aggressive, don't be too prideful. Like that's what she was saying in the broadcast. But Allison Manswell, 2016, listen. I think it was Listen Up or Listen In. Listen In. That's the name of the book. Listen In is all about workplace racism. Drapetomania.
Yes, well, I wanted to respond to the caller. I used to get upset when, people would call me ma'am because I looked at it from the vantage point of, age thing. I'm not, that old to be called a man, but now that, I'm becoming more codified and much more clear on, racism, when you look at it from the aspect of slavery, we go back to the slave mentality and how these slaves were, we were always taught to look at even little boys and little girls, we were taught to call them ma'am and sir, no matter how old they were. And whereas the adult black people were always, no matter how old they were, we were always regarded as boys and girls. And as Nellie Fuller says, in this system of white supremacy, we cannot be men and women. We are still regarded as boys and girls. So I think it's somewhat of a programming that has been left over from slavery that we are conditioned to not think of ourselves as sirs and ma'ams. I just think it's on some type of subconscious level because, why would I get offended when somebody would refer to me as a ma'am or a sir? I just think that there's a connection there. And that's, I'll mute my line.
Oh, yes, sir. Thomas in New York.
I've experienced similar. I go out of my way to call forces Mr. or Mrs. or, that's just my code. And I'm often corrected. But when people put themselves in a position of authority over me, I'm going to always revert back to the Mr. or Mrs. I don't care how many times they correct me, or the sir. Now, what I've noticed is, like, the bosses never want to be called Mr. or Sir. The owner or the top guy, just call it. They want to act like, I think that's a training amongst men in management, that they want to have a first name rapport with people. It's sort of, these are your associates, not your employees. That's the way I kind of look at it. But interesting though. But I refuse to call someone acting like my boss anything other than sir, Mr. or Mrs. That's just not going to happen. You acting like my boss, that's how I'm going to treat you. I was in the office I work at. I have they have these stations. They have these stations where you can stop by, like the old gumball machines, but they have it filled with nuts, all different types of cashews, a mixed nut, a variety, but not peanuts, more upscale nuts. So I personally like to eat nuts. So, I go through and I pull the little cup under and push the thing and they come out, And so the lady who terrorizes me, and for some reason I think this is just delectable Negro types. Here I have a cup of nuts, and I come into the office that I use, and she's eating the nuts out my cup that's on my desk. And when I walk in, she's like, "Oh, you busted me. Oh, these are good nuts." So I'm thinking to myself, like, why these are everywhere in the office. I mean, why would you want to touch someone else's thing? I mean, I have reached my hand in there and been eating out of it, but so either way, I threw them out. So when I came back, she says to me later, "Why did you throw those nuts out? We don't have money to be wasting nuts." So I said, because you put your hands in them, and I'm not eating anything you put your hands on. I mean, I don't do that. She says, "Oh, that's nonsense," and she walked out. So I did get a brand new knife. For 2-3 weeks, I've been cutting the fruit with a bread knife because someone stole the knives I was supposed to be using. So after my code has been, when people are in the kitchen, when they walk in and act like they could reach around me and just continue with their day and make their coffee and do everything, I walk out now. I'm not going to stand in there. So what she does is she likes to have me hold stuff. She buys her coffee in the morning wherever she lives, takes the trip to work, and then when she gets in the office, she wants to put her coffee in the microwave and heat it up. We heat it so it's hot. So generally in front of the microwave is where I lay out the fruit, because if I put it out where people walk past, they're going to start putting their hands in it and eating it before it's time. And, like I said, I like to have my presentation a certain way, so this way no one can say anything. So what she does is she comes in, "Oh my gosh, you have this stuff in front of the microwave. Here, hold this, hold this, hold this," so it stops me from doing my work. And now I'm holding stuff for a minute to a minute and 30 seconds while she reheats her coffee. So I kind of get pissed off doing that. So I walk off. Now, if she walks in, I'll walk out. So, of course, she's noticed, because now she has to move this stuff and herself, and she, "How come every time I walk in here, you walk out?" So I said, because I don't like it's a real small kitchen, and when people constantly walk in and are walking behind me and reaching over me and things, I feel uncomfortable using a knife. Using a knife, especially since I'm using this bread knife. So this is before I got the new knife. So she says, "I don't like this. I mean, you're wasting time. You could be cutting your fruit and getting your job done so you can do other things, but how am I going to be doing that if I'm holding the stuff for you? So it's essentially, so what I did was I went to the computer and I sent an email to the HR lady telling her that I feel very uncomfortable with people reaching around me and over me while I'm using a sharp instrument, And I also made the complaint about it's been 2 weeks and I'm still cutting fruit with a bread knife, and this is very dangerous because it's dull and it's sharp at certain points, and I've almost cut my hand. I just added that in, so the next day I got a brand new knife. Last incident with this lady, and this happened in front of the head of human resources. This happened in front of the reception. This happened in front of another partner. Now, when I bring her mail, like I said, she doesn't want to. I'm supposed to leave the mail on your desk and keep doing it so I can get around and get everybody their mail and get back to doing whatever else I need to do. But she wants to stand there and pick through it, pick and choose what she doesn't want and what she wants. So either way, sometimes she's on the phone or talking to someone. So when I walk in there, she gives me the look like, don't bother me right now, come back later. So, I usually come back an hour later or whatever with the stuff. Either way, I was busy. So, it was hours later. And I had a doctor's appointment, which they knew about. So I went to the doctor. So that took a few hours. So either way, when I come back from the doctor, she says, where's my mail? I haven't seen my mail all day. So I said, oh, well, you were busy. I don't want to hear that. I mean, you had all day to bring it to me, now she's in front of everyone. So I bring my mail to her, and I'm about to walk away. She says, where are you going? Here, take this. So she starts handing me all the trash, the stuff she doesn't want. Throw this out, right in front of the HR lady. HR lady looks at me like that, gives me that look like I feel so bad for you type look. But she's not correcting her, because that's incorrect behavior. And, that kind of cheated me off. And I'll mute my line. Thank you.
The HR representative probably recognized that, yeah, she's practicing white supremacy. Like, yeah. Oh, well, that happens on a pretty regular, everyday, hourly, I was going to say daily basis, but I mean, that is all day long system of racism, white supremacy. And there were so many different incidents. I mean, going all the way back to the nuts situation. Wow. Absolutely.
Yeah,
delectable Negro.
Wilson moment.
I mean, there were so many of them with the coffee, Dr. Welsing all the way through, but I thought delectable Negro, as Thomas in New York said, I agree with his assessment, delectable Negro, human consumption and homoeroticism in U.S. slave culture, full title of the text. Very important book that we read in the book club 2017.
Gus, one more. Talking about homoeroticism, you brought this to my mind. Now, the gentleman who tried to grab my crotch and zipper me up, this gentleman, every time I say, hey, how are you today to him, he makes this joke that you could kind of take in a homoerotic way. I say, hey, how you feeling today, Mr. Aaron Price? He'll say, with both hands. So I say, okay. So then finally, after all these months of working there, just this week, he says, how come you never make any response when I say that to you? And I say, well, I don't, you say you feel it with both hands, He says, you don't get the joke in that? And I said, no, and I walked away. But I thought that was definitely a gay joke, in my opinion.
I would concur. And given his history, any sort of comments like that might be in the workplace journal for the day as well, given his perverse behavior in the job. But I think definitely with the nut situation, that is, in my view, delectable Negro, having a white person where they feel that sort of freedom, like, oh yeah, I can just reach in to your plate, just be nibbling away on your food while you're not even. And then she says, "Oh, you caught me red-handed." Like, come on, man. I mean, they called the police. Black people have been lynched for lesser things, but I think there are lots of ways. Oh, and this is with the previous caller's experiment. It was mentioned, I think Ivy mentioned Jim Grimsley, who was on the program, How I Shed My Skin, in 2016, if my memory is all right. He And she mentioned he was talking to his black teacher and he deliberately called her by her first name. I think that's the same type of thing. Whites, they like to do things on a constant basis to flex their authority and our weakness in the system. Like, oh yeah, nigga, I'm gonna come and just eat your nuts, play over your food while you're gone, and be munching on them when you get back, in fact. And it goes all the way through with the knife situation as well, terrorizing about how the fruit is going to be cut and how much fruit is going to be there. And then the whole molesting that goes on when you're in the kitchen trying to get things done. And then they want to come and reach all around you and grab. I mean, the system of racism, of white supremacy on display. And as I said, delectable Negro, the coming in to warm up the coffee, Welsing moment right there. Old Black Joe, just consumption of black people, wasting our time, consuming our energy. And then to end, the one that you originally ended with, where she gives this tacky display in front of the human resources person. I think you might have said before that this particular white woman, people don't want to confront her or what have you. She's intimidated everyone and just gets to terrorize the whole office. In my view, even that doesn't stand with the other whites that I'm talking about, because I've seen whites where they have people like this and they get them in check too. Like, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. We are done with Bill Cosby. We're done with R. Kelly, and we're done with you too. Like, I've seen where whites, they can put their foot down and we're not going to have this. You're not going to be talking to employees like this. But no, we are all right. System of white supremacy. That nigger didn't get the watermelon straight anyway. He deserved. Like, that's the world in which we live, unfortunately. And that is a big part in terms of health problems, that sort of thing. They know big impact on us having high blood pressure, hypertension, the exact health ailments that we talked about before. That plays a huge role in it. And I take the position that whites know that, and they do that sort of thing deliberately for that reason. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have commentary on your own situation, or if you want to speak to some of what has been discussed before, line should be open. Proceed.
I'm sorry, Gus. I'd like to talk, but I'm not in the area where I could speak without too much noise in the background. I'll just mute my line and try to call and try to chime in a little after when I'm in a quieter place. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know, sir. Other folks we've not heard from, if you have commentary, line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, caller in Florida.
Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. I'm speaking about the tampering with food, things like that. I've been meaning to share an incident on that because I have a few that I want to share right now. To start out with that one, the context is, like, I had to take the passports to the post office, and it was one of my first few times doing this. So we're supposed to clock out at like 5 o'clock. So I got back a little late to clock back out, or to clock out to go home. And they were having like the white people, some of the top white people were having I guess some kind of a chat, or they were just standing talking, I guess waiting for me to come back. And it's this box on the table, okay, with I guess they were some kind of gourmet cupcakes. And it was one left, and it was an Oreo. It was an Oreo cupcake. Or they may call it cookies and cream. I thought of that as a Wilson moment too. Because, it's chocolate. And they was offering it to me. One of me said, yeah, go ahead and take this home. So I threw it right in the trash. That's exactly what I did, because I just didn't trust eating it. The second incident was there was two couples there were two black females, my coworkers in the department. They were discussing what people put down as their race, and the lady who conducts the marriage license sessions, she was saying, hey, this is the second couple to come in today where the person looked like they were black, but they they were saying that they were, the term is Hispanic and white. But the second couple said that she didn't want to put down that she was white herself because her mom would get upset with her. And they are looking at her like she is white, but her mom would get angry that she puts down that she's white. And okay, see, because this is confusion, because the black female is saying, well, to me, she looked, quote unquote, biracial. And the other black female said she looked white. And then the guy looked Hispanic. Okay. And the female is saying, no, I'm not going to put down that I'm white. You know, my mom wouldn't like that. So she didn't say who her mom was. And another thing I wanted to share on that is I spotted that it's a white/black option you can check, and it says black/white. So it's two of the same words. It's one goes first, like black will go first and white will go first. So it's white/black and then black/white. So I don't know what the difference is with that. I've been meaning to ask my supervisor about this, and I feel comfortable enough to do it. And the next incident was there's this commercial down here in Florida. I don't know if this playing anywhere else, because I saw this in the break room, and the new non-white female employee. I don't think she's classified as black. We were watching this commercial, and I believe it's about like driving under the influence, not necessarily of alcohol. It can be like, I guess, cannabis or whatnot. And the person, it's at least 2 or 3 different ones. The person who is, I guess, the subject of the commercial, like that's supposed to be driving under the influence. This is a white person, and the authoritative figure, the enforcement officer, they are portraying this as a black male in both commercials. So I kind of figured this person was going to try to mention something about it. And the slogan of the commercial is drive baked, get busted. BAKED, like baked. And like that, I know that term roasted was used in one of the audio segments. So the female, she was like, oh, of course, like they would use the black guy stopping a white person. What if it was the other way around or whatever? And I think this person might be unfortunately sexually involved with a white man. So that could be heavily influencing her mindset. Okay. And so I asked, why is the word baked being used for saying that somebody is under the influence and they, have impaired judgment? And she agreed with me, said, that does sound strange, because you're supposed to, that word baked is when you're cooking something and, something gets darker or something. And she agreed with me on that. And I wanted to share that on the program. That term baked was used in this commercial. I don't know, it might be on YouTube or something. And that's the only thing that I have to share right now. And thanks for allowing me to speak.
Well, I got in 2 hearty laughs. I needed it. I did not have a pleasant yoga class this morning. And when you do early morning yoga and it's unpleasant at 6 in the morning, woo, that is an unpleasant way to start the day. But I got 2 hearty, robust bouts of laughter with Thomas's nuts being fondled in New York, ha ha ha, and our caller in Florida. That is extra clowning. That's worse than the nuts, in my opinion. On a serious, this is at the courthouse. My man does not work at Dairy Queen or, Carl Jr.'s. This is at the courthouse down in Florida. You got serious documentation. People coming in to get licenses and serious court papers and what have you. What's your racial classification? Black-white. white or white-black. That is clowning. Like Richard Pryor has nothing on that. And I would like somebody to come in, if you get explanation on that. Now, what is the difference? Meghan Markle comes in here. Is she black dash white? White dash black. President Obama comes in here. Which box can you check both boxes? Clowning. Like you just go in and make up anything. Like, yes, put more up, more. They'll come back and then they'll probably do the Hispanic, white, black, non-Hispanic, white. But they'll just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And the confusion is lethal. That is amazing. If you get any clarification on that one, let us know, or at least let me know. I would be very eager.
Can I comment on that, Gus?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man, when I hear baked, I think marijuana smoke. They had the classic movie Half Baked, which was all about marijuana smoke. It's usually one that goes hand in hand. And what my question would be is, if they asked in the meeting or told, how are they going to tell if these people are baked or not? What is their criteria? Do they have to have something lit in the car for them to make that assessment, or are they going to have some type of weedalizer test or some other heroinizer test? Like, how are they going to be able to know this? If he watched the show, he watched the documentary. I just was curious what type of techniques are they going to use to catch people who are baked? With driving, when you're drinking, they could pull you over, they give you the breathalyzer, and that's been pretty accurate. Courts accept it as accurate, and they make judgments based on it. So I would love to know what new apparatuses they have. And also with the white and black and white, I think that the majority of black people who have a white mother will check white and black, and the majority of black people who have a black mother will check black and white. And I've also seen, Gus, black, non-Hispanic, non-white Hispanic, and non-black Hispanic on those type of forms.
Oh, I've seen those too. I'm postulating that the new one will be non-white, black - white, and then they can just keep adding. The permutations abound when you just get to add slop on top of slop. And the baked that was Dave Chappelle, his coming out half baked, unless I'm in error. But yeah, I thought that was outstanding as well. Just really paying attention to the use of words. I feel like I might have seen that commercial, but then I'm not sure. I feel like I need to see it one more time to make sure that yes, that's the commercial that I'm thinking of. I'll look to see if they have it on YouTube, since that's a PSA is so short. It's probably online, but definitely paying attention to the use of words and how consistently black or things being darkened is associated with something vile, criminal, mischievous, to be avoided. It's rife throughout the system of white supremacy racism. Appreciate the commentary in Florida. Let us, Stacy in the UK. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I was just going to just a couple of points on the person from the Florida courthouse and the racial classifications. I'm just wondering, but building on what Thomas just said, actually, because nothing is accidental, I'm wondering if it is a way of assessing beyond the obvious about how people classify themselves as to how confused they are and how that information gets used. Do you, because you have a white parent, a white mother in specifically, see yourself as white, black, and then vice versa? I think that's actually quite an important point, and because you have to wonder why all of this information is being collated and why all of those classifications, and it doesn't need to be that complicated. So in fact, unless there's some real research going on, it just doesn't make any sense to especially for every single organisation, to have so many different variables as to why they would ask such information. So, I guess my question is that a way of assessing the level of confusion amongst the population? And then also, Thomas, I had a couple of questions for Thomas actually, because in his feedback, and it just sounds like a complete and utter nightmare, what he's dealing with. But I've seemed to recall a few programs back, he mentioned that someone in HR had approached him about the way in which this female is terrorizing him, and I just wondered if there was any follow-up to that. And I know he mentioned the delectable Negro, but does he actually think there is a sexual component to what she's doing beyond just the random acts of racist terrorism? Because she just seems fixated with him beyond even, well, I guess anything that I've really experienced in terms of terrorism in the workplace. But I'll mute my line, Gus.
Thomas in New York, did you, or if you're in an able spot where you can answer?
Yes. To the latter question, I don't think there's a sexual component, even though anything could be possible with if she's not bothering me and I leave, she's bothering someone else, so it's not just me. The reason why I mentioned the book Delectable Negro, because I didn't take all forms of consumption as being sexual. Just slowly consuming you, they're eating you alive. Like it's just like Gus said, you feel the comfort to just be on someone else's desk eating their nuts. Like it's just nothing to you. It's just I can just knowing that they can do it is what they're getting off by it, because I couldn't do that to her. What was the first question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it was about the HR response, because I seem to recall you had said that somebody from HR had approached you.
I told you, I think I mentioned on one of the shows, I heard her chewing out the HR lady one day while I was in the HR lady's office. So I was under the assumption that this lady doesn't have as much authority as the lady who's bothering me. And so I decided to be codified and not mention it yet. You know, it's obvious. That's why she's asking. You know, she's pretty much asking me, do you have a problem with the way you're being treated? And being that I'm new there, I just say no. You know, listen, I could accept it. I'll do what I have to do to keep this job. So that's been my way of going about it. But that's why I mentioned during this week, the HR lady was standing there as she's opening envelopes, handing me the empty envelope and keeping the mail, telling me, you know, this is trash, and she did nothing. Also, the guy whose position I took, who's been promoted, and he does my job if I'm not there still. But he told me that if you go to the HR lady, things will change for about 2 weeks, and then it'll get worse, because he's experienced that himself. So he told me, don't do it.
Context of white supremacy. White women do it better. Other folks.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Sorry about earlier. I was just in a loud area. Greetings to the hosts. Greetings to the listeners and the callers. Just a quick tidbit. I did have an interesting situation recently at work, where a client, an executive that I tend to work with all of his devices, mobile devices and things of that nature, he saw me in the elevator banks, opened up the door. This is a white male. And when he saw me, he opened up his arms and said, "Come here, give me a hug." Now, I don't know anything about him outside of the work that I do for him. And I don't think I've let up on any kind of hinting that me and him have some kind of rapport. Like I said, I barely know him. But as he approached me, he's saying, come on, give me a hug. And I go, get away from me. And I put my hands up as to stop him, to create the distance. And he's like, no. And he still keeps on cringing until finally, where literally he comes close to my hand, he realizes that I'm very serious. And I go, no, it's not going to happen. He stops at that moment, turns around, and goes, oh, okay. Is everything all right? And as if nothing happened, as if he didn't try to invade my space and infringe on me. And I just found it extremely odd. After that, I told a few women that were in the office, mainly black women. I asked them in regards to this, like, has he ever done this before, or approached them in some weird fashion? And they told me that he basically studied philosophy, Greek philosophy. That's his main background, and he tends to be very creepy around them, creeping over their shoulders in their cubicle, getting a little bit too close and touchy and feely. So there's something inherently wrong with him. I mean, obviously, I think he feels like he has the right to do that, but I've been keeping my distance, and once I heard this, I kind of had an inkling as to what some of those issues may be. But anyway, I'll mute my line. That's pretty much all I had to share for this week. Thank you.
Black self-respect, just the importance of being serious. That right there, I think I talked about that earlier in the program, the importance of having a code. You have a plan. These types of things could happen. When I started in the workforce, I did not have a notion at all that, yes, as a black male, you will need a counter-racist code for females and males, white men and white women, potentially sexually assaulting you in the workplace. I did not have that in my thought process at all. That right there puts you at a disadvantage when you're thinking any of these whites, the men, the women, any of them, might be trying to do something sexually perverted, anything, say something, I need to be prepared, this is what I'm going to do, move away, bam, the hand, no touching, no hug, nothing, serious. This is not a joke, I am not laughing, this is serious business, and I am serious about my space and people not violating my space in the workplace. I have recommended consistently, if you start a job, you should ask questions about that, their policy about unwanted touching in the workplace, just because that sends a signal up immediately that you are serious about this. And then you get to hear how they explain it, what they say, so you get to already kind of feel them out too. But outstanding work. And that's just so tacky for them to try to explain on this day and time. We're not going to put up with that rubbish from Morgan Freeman, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, or anybody else to say, oh, well, he studied philosophy. That's just, how he is. He's creepy. We're going to tolerate a white person being creepy, in the words of Trayvon Martin, in this day and age? No, absolutely not. Not at all. I would document. I would want that written down. And I think we've had people, Emmy among them, who have told whites that they did something like that. They came up and grabbed them or attempted to hug them or whatever it is, came up and just re-emphasized the following day, hey, that is really inappropriate. Do not do that ever again in the workplace or whatever, however you want to phrase it. Just the seriousness of, this is my space. I am not going to be violated. Don't think this is going to be a pattern, repetitive. This goes for today and forever about my space in the workplace. Not saying, to do that or what have you. I just know that folks have done that before just to kind of highlight the seriousness of the situation, the infraction. Matter of fact, before we get to other folks who dialed in, we had a listener who wrote in. She said she had a question. She says, I have a question for all the callers who work jobs dealing with any form of application processing, mortgage, credit card, insurance claims, etc. If your place of employment takes forever to process, approve, or deny these applications, is it because the white person in charge approving it is too busy lollygagging, that's my word, to do their work, or is it because it's just that the verification process is that long? I'm just curious because I know for a fact my job, the reason why everything is slow is because the whites in charge are lazy. My workplace racism issue is I just noticed after listening to a previous broadcast, every time I request paid time off, I am immediately discouraged from taking it by my white boss. I mentioned that at the beginning of the program. She literally harasses me and tries to intimidate me into quitting, or subliminally tries to insinuate I will get fired for taking PTO, workplace terrorism, right? And that's time theft, in my opinion. My white coworkers are allowed to take unpaid time for weeks, and she congratulates them. Me being gone does not stop the workflow, but my white coworkers who leave can literally delay a person's claim. I work in insurance for weeks. Today, my white boss starts talking to another black employee about me taking 1 day of PTO and how it's so ridiculous, etc., while at the same time trying to get this black employee to cover for another white employee who will be gone for weeks. This white employee doesn't even work in our office. She works in another office, the one I like to call the No Black People Allowed office, because there isn't anywhere there is adequate coverage. But since our office has a few black people, we are expected to immediately do their work and come to their rescue. My boss is in a tragic arrangement and is one of the most vile, disgusting racists you will ever meet, since she, I'm guessing, learned how to become the super expert in refined racism from her husband. Ick all the way. So the question, people that are in work with any sort of application processing, does it take a long time because the process is lengthy, or does it take a long time because the whites are lollygagging? That was her question for people that are in some form of processing. Did we have any folks who wanted to respond to that one?
I have to say lollygagging. I would even say for places where you have to wait for some type of verification and the computer's doing it, they put slower computers in the black communities that do that. I mean, it's just what they do. So I would say lollygagging, and I would say it's done intentionally.
See if we have any other folks who do any sort of processing, application processing, if they want to respond, as we also nab folks that we may have missed completely. Emmy, are you with us? Did you have commentary you wanted to share?
Greetings. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for taking my call. I did have a couple of things that I was thinking about that I'm hoping might be helpful to other folks that have been helpful to me. First, I wanted to clarify and be specific. I remember maybe a few broadcasts ago, I was sharing an anecdote about a floater white female pharmacist who essentially committed insurance fraud. And I think we might have made a joke saying that I was snitching. I just wanted to be clear that snitching is when, as far as I understand, because I actually was going over this in Mr. Fuller's work, is when you're saying something for personal gain. I actually was not snitching. I'm totally cool with the back and forth banter and joking and whatnot, but just to be clear, if anyone's like listening to the things that I'm saying and, but that snitching is for personal gain. And I didn't get any personal gain from that. I just didn't want to be held responsible for her incorrect behavior and have been told that I allowed or condoned this insurance fraud, even though she's above me. So I just wanted to share that to clarify. Another point, I wanted to share an anecdote from today. I was at the pharmacy, and I'm so grateful for having a code. I'm so grateful for even knowing about codification and trying to become more codified. And I'm still reading, but also rereading certain parts of the text. Mr. Fuller's work, that is. And I was at the drive-thru, and this white female came in, and she's all tatted and whatnot, Welsing moment. And I think she's high. What she's high on, I'm not so sure. I couldn't really recognize her high, but I think she's high. And she has, I think, her daughter in the back. And she comes to pick up her prescription that's not ready because the person that she was picking up for, I'm assuming her child, hadn't filled with us before. So we made a temporary profile, but it didn't have all of the information. Getting to the point, we needed her insurance information. While I'm explaining this and, getting the insurance information, she attempted on several occasions to have a very nasty attitude, but it was real slick how she did it, because it wasn't so blatant that, you would just be affronted by her slick attitude. It was so slick as though she was trying to coax something out of me to make me react to her so that now we could both have this nasty attitude. So my code is to be very professional at all times. I think that's probably everybody's code at work, but it's definitely one that I work on, one that I'm even priding myself on a little bit, that, at my job, I do not treat anyone better or anything like that. In healthcare, I provide the same information to everybody. With the exception, I do give more to the non-white people in terms of like my energy and maybe compliments or talking to their children or entertaining their stories. That I do. But in the basis of what is required when you meet me at the pharmacy, everyone's going to get. So I will try to, work out the insurance problems, and we'll try to give you a nice discount, like a discount card that is constructive or bringing down the price. Anyway, but I noticed it. And so the first couple of times I thought it was so interesting. I was like, she's trying me. But I watched it from a very codified place that it was humorous almost. Because, really? So then it got to the point that, and all the errors that are occurring, the difficulty in getting this thing accomplished are her fault. She's giving an insurance card from 2011, so the processor is different. She then hands me the wrong insurance card, and I tell her the name on it is incorrect, and she's like, well, I have, I have mine, all this attitude. And I said, well, you can just look at it. Ain't nothing I can do about it with the wrong name, so what you want to do? So she looks at it, and then she gets bashful and, hands me the thing. Anyway, of course, the pharmacist and I, we work it out and, continue moving. But I mentioned it was so obvious, her trying to bait me into this negative space with her, that I was like, I don't know, I had, I muted the mic, and I was like, I don't know why she's doing it. And the pharmacist was like, I know, I don't get it. Even he noted from all the way over there that every time she opened her mouth, it was so attitudinal. But getting to the code is number one. When I repeat the same thing over and over at my job to various people, I don't get hiccups about explaining something to someone who's trying to bait me into an argument or bait me into a negative space with them. The professionalism remains no matter what. I've practiced that, especially at this job at this time, and it's super helpful. And definitely reading the code, I think, is probably what I'd like to stress with the vignette, with this particular anecdote or vignette of today's experience at work. Because every time that you read it or go over things or even just flip through the quotes in the back, something will stick and can be helpful the very next time that you have to be at your workplace. And then the last two things I wanted to say is you cannot dress your way out of racism. You cannot talk your way out of racism, white supremacy, or being a victim of it. I do, however, think that, and I have experimented and noticed a difference, that when I present a certain way, it establishes, an aura around me and allows me to stay more codified. Not necessarily that it makes anyone else treat me better, but because of the way that I've gotten myself together today, the way that I'm presenting this information or relaying whatever it is I'm trying to relay, that, for instance, this tacky terroristic, white female who tried me was unable to pull me out of the internal oral environment, I guess, that I set for myself. So I don't know how you go about it. I like to do it with my dress. I like, or anything like that or whatever, like just create it and see if it works for you if you haven't already. And then the other thing I wanted to say is sometimes it's hard to be confrontational or to confront someone who's aggressing you, at least for myself. And so some things are so blatant that you confront it because it's like, I can't tolerate that for a second. But some of the ones that are a little bit more subtle can sometimes be a little bit more difficult to maneuver around. And so one thing that I've been practicing is it's a type of a banter, but I'm serious in understanding that this banter will not be the norm, but this is giving me I can kind of be a little bit more comfortable by saying, oh, I'm not cool with that. Or like, no, you actually are getting on my nerves, or something like that. To where I'm not holding it in, and now all this energy is building up in me, and then I start shaking, looking like a crazy person. So I let it out kind of like in a joke or like in a little bit of a banter, and that makes me a little bit more comfortable to say certain things than to just not say anything at all until I feel a little bit more comfortable to be like, no, I actually don't really like that, and make it stick. So I don't know if that's really codified in other people's opinion or not, but it is something that that is working for me right now. I will follow up and let you all know if it really works in the future, but it's working now. And then I forgot to tell you one little part about when the floater racist suspect white woman came and worked at the pharmacy. She actually looked me in my face and repeated over and over and over again, because she wanted to find out what I'm doing with my life. And she wanted to repeat over and over again that I was eloquent and articulate and I should do something with that. And I just thought it was the most hilarious thing. But I think I neglected to mention that. But again, if I practice nothing about my code, I practice not reacting and not being emotional about things. And that has helped me tremendously. So anyway, I hope some of what I said has been helpful, and I thank you all for listening.
Indeed. Controlling, managing emotions, that's been said a few times. That is critical aspect of counter-racist codification, in my opinion. I said consistently, if we cannot manage our emotions, not just in the workplace context, but beyond, if we can't do that, then you can basically throw the rest of the codification out, because that is the key. Being able to manage emotions, work from logic, solve problems without creating new problems, make accurate assessments of what's happening so you can figure out what is best to do. Being able to keep your emotions in check, not ignoring them, but just not allowing your emotions to dominate how you're going to think, speak, and act, especially when you're dealing with whites, non-whites too, but especially race soldiers. Always appreciate definitions and clarifying what we mean when we say snitch on the broadcast. Fantastic. I'm not sure if attitudinal is in the word guide, but it did get used on the broadcast. Other folks that we have not heard from at all, caller 7892, if you have commentary you wanted to share, you should be with us.
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Thank you, Gus. I wasn't sure if maybe you could just clarify my understanding of the conference system. So when I initially call in and hit pound or *61, I'm not unmuted until I don't know if it's automatically the prompt that says that I'm unmuted or if you have to unmute. But I didn't. Sorry if I misunderstood and contacted you prematurely about not being heard.
Not a problem.
To speak before. Okay, sorry. Okay, I called in last week about I'm the anonymous person at the liberal organization, and I was just calling to give a quick update. May have been over a month ago, I initially had first written into the show about the Black the Black People's Group at my job. So I wanted to give a quick update on that and a couple of the anecdotes. So the group organized meetings with different departments, human resources, and other departments to discuss issues specific to African Americans internally and externally. And what was interesting about it was when we wanted to discuss the financial piece with the CFO and the CEO, and they requested more information about the mortgage loan numbers, and that ruffled a lot of feathers. So the human resources department heads met with us, and there was another group, I forgot, they all met with us. Those meetings went fine. And the CFO initially, his initial response to the email was to deflect and say that he thought it would be a great conversation, but he wanted to include all groups, all people. And so the group pushed back on that. And what happened was, behind the scenes, apparently some of the other higher ups that have a closer relationship to the CEO said that he actually approached some of them and he was upset. They got very defensive because the mortgage numbers are low, as we're aware that redlining is coming back. And they're, don't want to share, the paperwork. They're trying to hide the information. So what happened after that was they put together a presentation at our follow-up staff meeting where the CEO presented a segment on, African-American impact in general. And he showed a video from the 1980s. I'm not kidding, literally a 30-plus-year-old video of a homeowner, a woman that got a mortgage loan from the company. She was giving some kind of thank you speech, etc. And then he went on to the rest of his presentation discussing the other data and focused on what they call the secondary market. So they're not really giving out mortgage loans to African Americans, but they're buying up other loans from other companies in the secondary market and using that to bolster their numbers, or saying like, this is our impact for Black home ownership. So that frustrated a lot of people in the group, and there was a lot of, eye rolling and things like that. And one of the other interesting things that I noticed was after the meeting, when we were getting onto the elevators, it was a white female that had put together the data for the report, and she was getting a lot of congratulatory pats on the back from other white coworkers. Like, someone told her, because we all got into the elevator at the same time, someone said to her, that must have been a lot of work. And, she looked like, she just was projecting this energy that was a burden, and that was, just so much work that she had to do to, get this information to these Black people, et cetera. So the group has decided to, they're taking some of the meetings off-site, and they want to meet with the CEO off-site. And so they're organizing around that, and they're asking for volunteers to put together. They think the best way to approach him with issues and suggestions for implementing some of the changes, related to, supporting African American customers externally, and like internal things with staff development, is to create a document. So they want volunteers to work on that, and then there's going to be an off-site meeting to meet with him. So after the experience I've been dealing with in my own role in my department, I told them that I'm just going to step back from that because I, have to focus on other things, but I can support. But I'm no longer going to be involved in that initiative that they're working on. But I just thought the way that they played it was very interesting. A few other anecdotes. There was a director of our admin services who recently left the company, and they did some very underhanded stuff with him. So he was the director of admin services, so they handle like travel, logistics, supply, and I think he initiated a supplier diversity program, and this was something that they were talking about when I first started at the end of last year. So he put together, I think, a whole program and initiative. I think he got, getting a lot of positive support for it. And there was an understanding that, they were going to set up the program, and he was going to transition into that role and become the head of supplier diversity or some kind of new role. So what they did, and this is someone, he'd been with the company for about 10 years. He was promoted. He started, I think he may have started at a lower position. Very, very professional, black male, always wore suits, things like that. So I think he did all this work to put together this program, and what they did was they decided I think they still have to announce the jobs, the position. So they announced the position internally and externally, and come to find out they made it part-time. So it was only 20 hours a week. So if he did take on the position, he would be, probably take some kind of salary cut. So they completely undermined him, and he left at the end of March. So that was a really insightful moment to me about how slick these people are. And so I found out at the last meeting, the black folks meeting that we had this past week, that they did meet with the CEO about the status of the supplier diversity program. And he said that the decision to make it part-time was he made that decision, that came directly from him, and that they were going to select 2 individuals, 2 team leads or supervisors to take on the program. So they weren't going to do a traditional, employee application process. They're going to handpick folks. We don't know, who they're going to pick, if it's going to be a black person or a white person. And he's changing it from the supplier diversity program to he changed the name from supplier diversity to supplier inclusion. So that was interesting. Very nasty. Other things that have happened. Another interesting thing that happened that I thought was very intrusive at a conference call, at a meeting in a conference room. I was setting up the GoToMeeting conference line and everything, and I had my phone with me, and I happened to be listening to playbacks of the C.O.W.S, but the screen was locked. It was, was in sleep mode, so the screen was black. It was sitting on the table, and a white male coworker walked up, and he touched the home screen of my phone. He said, "Whose phone is this?" And he just touched the home screen. And I, kind of moved quickly to grab it so he couldn't see the C.O.W.S title scrolling across, and he knew what he did was wrong because he saw my reaction. As I was moving quickly to grab my phone, he kind of said, "Oh, don't grab my phone." Like he imitated what he thought my inner dialogue was. I've never seen anyone do that. Just go, he specifically touched my phone because he wanted to see what was on it. And so I thought that was very intrusive. Never seen anyone do anything that invasive. This is an IT person as well, and he has contacted me a few times about, websites I've visited being, pinging them as a possible bug, a virus, or they've gotten some kind of alert that there was an issue. I only do work-related searching and everything on my PC and things, but I know that he's been, he's monitoring me, or he gets alerts about me. Another interesting thing that happened is, so I did a community service event with some of my coworkers for Habitat for Humanity. And when we were on the construction site, the representative from Habitat, white male, probably in about his 30s, I think we were having some kind of discussion about the weather. The weather was really warm and sunny, and then it rained briefly, and then the sun came back out. So we were kind of going inside and outside to accommodate what the weather conditions were. And someone made a comment about being happy that the sun was back out and it's bright and shiny. And he said, I like the weather cold and dark like my soul. And he said it kind of casually as a joke. So I thought that was interesting. I just noted that. Also, I do side jobs, like freelance work on the side. And a white male that I regularly work with. He's also like a freelance filmmaker. He's very vulgar. He does a lot of like vulgar type slapstick comedy that, you know, deals with like, you know, body fluids, that type of kind of disgusting type stuff. But we were at a broadcast. He's very cynical. He likes to talk trash about people. We were at a broadcast for an event, and this is an event he regularly works, so he's familiar with some of the individuals that they're, it's a council meeting, so he's familiar with some of the personalities because he attends it regularly to shoot. So he pointed out one of the members as being, he does, I guess he thinks the person is I guess an asshole is what he would say. But he was like, he pointed to the guy and he was like, see this guy here? He told me that he's the word he used was, he said, that guy's a cockbag. And then the town mayor, he referred to him, he said, that guy's a cockbag. And he said, I hope that the mayor pisses on him to show his domination, or to express domination over him. So I thought that was interesting because I thought about the Nelson Mandela thing and that type of behavior. And another thing that happened, and this is what I would like the other listeners to maybe give feedback on or insight. I had an issue with a black male coworker early on when I first started. So he was a producer for one of the videos that we shot, and there's a lot of confusion about roles and who's doing what. But when I came on, I took on some of the workload for editing, and so he sent an email initially to clarify who was going to do what, and he got a response from the project manager. But I don't know if he just was having problems adjusting to the change in structure because he'd done a video previously and it was just completely independent. But they brought other people in as they decided to expand the project and do an entire series. He's a bit older. He's in his maybe late 40s, going into his 50s. And what happened was we set up a meeting to go through a lot of the B-roll so he could select what he wanted to use in the final cut of the film. But before that, he just kept asking me the same question over and over again about, so what he wanted to know what the editor, the person who we were going to hand over all the files to, was going to need. He was like, we had a meeting with her earlier that day. He wanted to know what she needed, and that had already been answered in the email. And I told him again, I'm going to organize all the files. We're going to select what we want her to use in the final cut, and then I'm going to give it to her. And he said, well, is she going to want that today? And I was explaining to him, I don't know what she's going to specifically ask for, but this is what we have to do to prepare, for her to have what she needs anyway. So we had a meeting to go through the B-roll. So then we sat down to do that, and he wanted to immediately for me to start doing the assembly cut. And that wasn't something that he needed to sit there for. And so I told him, well, I'm not prepared to do that right now. Like I showed him an initial, like I did like 2 clips for him just to show him, how it was done. And then what he did was, after he kind of pulled me into that, he started pushing. He was like, well, no, let's finish that. And I felt very uncomfortable. He started kind of being pushy and assertive. This meeting took place in my office. So he was sitting right next to me, to the left of me at my desk, and we're working on the computer. And so I said, well, I'm not prepared to do that right now. Also, because the system that I have I don't have the technology that I need. Sometimes my computer freezes, and it just wasn't productive or efficient for him to sit there for me to and watch me do that, because I didn't need him to direct me to, line up all the clips in the sequence. I needed him to tell me what B-roll he wanted me to, we were going to use. And so he kept pushing me. And so what happened was I started to do some of it, and he started to micromanage everything I did. So I'm playing a clip and I'm selecting it's sequenced to a script, so I have to play the video to find out where the dialogue is that they want to use and pull it so I can hear the audio. And what he was doing was, as soon as that line came up, he would say, okay, there it is, that's it. So he was just completely micromanaging me. He was really close, like pushing my personal boundaries, like that 18-inch diameter that they say kind of a human personal boundary that we have for comfort. So I stopped and I said, we're not going to do this now. It will be better if we do the B-roll. And I tried to kind of rationalize with him because B-roll is going to take a lot longer. And he got upset and he was just like, no, let's do, the rough cut now. And so I just said no. And so he got up and left. And it was just a very uncomfortable situation. I almost started, getting nerves and shaking. And I'm just like, what is this problem? So I took a few breaths and I walked into his office, which is actually right next to mine. And I said, said his name, said, what's the problem? And he said, the problem is you refuse to do the rough cut. And I said, Anthony, I'm not refusing to do it, but this is not the best time to do it now. I said, I told him initially that we can reschedule it for later in the afternoon after the meeting with Carol. But the more important thing for the moment was to have the B-roll selected for her. He didn't say anything and I left, and he sent an email. He copied me, but he sent an email to my director informing her that he said that he had a problem. He said, Stephanie, I told him that he doesn't have any authority over me, so he needs clarification about who's in charge of the project. So what he was asserting when he was pushing me to do one task over the other was that he was like, and do I have the authority over this as a producer or not? And I told him, you don't have authority over my point by point task and like when and how I do it. That's not the type of dynamic that's set up. Like, you're not telling me you're doing this at 8, at 10, this and that. But he framed it like I told him, like I was trying to take over the project. And I guess maybe that's how he interpreted my presence or my existence there in general. So she came over and we kind of talked it out. And he just felt like his overall
get
feedback
to
was like
a conclusion so that folks could give feedback.
Okay, so I just don't know where that was coming from. I'm just curious as to why he was behaving that way, and then why he went and told on me. And a follow-up incident to that was he wanted to come in and scan some documents, and that was at the scanners attached to my computer, so I have to be at my computer to do that. And that's something that people just hand off to me and I normally do. And he came into the office and he wanted to do it, and like he put the items on the scanner. He held them down there, like he leaned over my desk, onto my desk, and put his elbows on my desk, like his face was almost right next to mine as I was sitting there. And that was something he did after that incident a few weeks later, I think.
So what is it that you would like listeners to kind of give, like how to minimize conflict or how you should deal with this blackmail?
Well, maybe the men can explain to me like what happened there with him. I didn't because he called the director, I told her that one of the reasons I reacted that way to him was because I felt uncomfortable, and and then he got upset about that, and I said, I'm no way implying any kind of inappropriate behavior or anything like that, but I don't know what the deal is with him, like why he was expressing his dominance and acting that way. And that's it. I'll mute my line. Thank you.
For sure.
Question: Would she have done the same thing if it was a white male?
Well, who have done what?
If a white male came in and tried to micromanage you and stand over you, would you have told him, no, you're not doing this? Would you have had that same response?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes, it was very uncomfortable. And I didn't tell him no. I was, telling him that we had scheduled the meeting to do something else, and
just weren't going to do it at that exact moment.
Right.
As a male, I think number one, the anti-blackness. I think the entire known universe has been conditioned to be very resistant to competent black people that even appear like they might be in charge of something or know how to have some expertise in an area that we don't. I think everybody, whites, non-whites, can be a little unruly with that prospect. Maybe that had an impact. Maybe it didn't. In terms of what the way that he was speaking to you or asking to do these things at this exact moment. I think just in those type of situations, I think anytime if it gets to be where it's hostile, I mean, you certainly have disagreements. We have disagreements on the program, but I mean, if it gets to a point where you're hostile and you're feeling like I'm shaking and, this is unpleasant, I always think disengaging the conversation and just picking it back up when I think you said to get an opportunity to just kind of get your breath, kind of get your bearings to figure out where things went wrong. If he's making accusations and saying that questioning authority on a project, I would just clarify exactly what you said there, clarify what you said in terms of I am not rejecting your authority as the producer. It's just, we have a timetable scheduled about what's priority for me to get done. This is not a priority right now. Just being clear about that. Emails can be great in this too to document because anytime where there's a question or an accusation about what's been said, or he said, she said that I'm not gonna follow his directions at this moment. Having documentation of this is exactly what I said. I think with this situation, you'll have leeway. I was going to say it is another victim of white supremacy. You can exercise more patience. Some people don't operate in that manner. They function the same in the workplace. Just saying this is how I'm going to deal with the situation, particularly when somebody is behaving in a way that's made me uncomfortable, or I feel like I might, being mistreated. This is just going to be the code that, I follow through, and just being very bedrocked, very unflinching in how they adhere to the code, regardless of whether it's a white person or a non-white person. So did any other males have any thoughts about, since you asked for that specifically, any of the other males on the line have any thoughts about that interaction or how they would deal? Black male who's just saying she questioned his authority.
Yeah, and just to clarify, like I said, when he brought my director in, first of all, he decided to escalate to that after I came in and asked him, what was the problem, to try to resolve it between us. But then he told her that, so she, when we were explaining what happened, he interpreted it as so she's telling me what to do. But I'm responding to your question because he initially, before we had the meeting, asked me what we need to prepare. So it was like a no-win.
Okay.
My response to your question is me telling you what to do.
Any of the other males that are with us have any thoughts? I'll double check in to see if I missed any of them. I'll double check before we get to the end of the broadcast. I know not a male, but we have not heard from her at all. Ivy, did you have any comments that you wanted to get in before we get to the end of the broadcast?
Yes, greetings, Gus, and greetings to all the callers on the line. I wanted to, about Dropomania, I wanted to ask if it's, well, I'll say my question for the last part. I'll say for the codified software developer, I kind of figured that you didn't have anything in your desk because you stayed codified. And I wanted to answer the firefighter's question about the NFL players. I think that this is also a tactic to create conflict between the players, especially black players. And I hope that they get to a point really where they can, sue for this, because, for them to, to be forced to have to stand for the anthem and all that nonsense. I just hope they can sue and win. And as far as for Dropomania and calling the cops, for this race soldier who's stalking her and watching her and all of that. I think that was great advice. And for the person who asked about sharing advice, I think it was Apple Valley, to share advice with someone, like sharing a book that you had, and then she went and told some white people. For people like that, in all honesty, for me personally, I wouldn't share anything else with them because I think that, just me personally, I think people, if you don't know, that you don't just go around sharing whatever somebody shares with you, without asking them first. I mean, it's like you don't have any, you don't have any regard for privacy, and especially if you're gonna go share with white people, that's really I can't do that. And what I was gonna ask Dr. Mania is if it's possible if somebody could walk her in and out of her job, maybe for a little while until maybe this race soldier disappears, because I'm kind of concerned for her safety. And that was it. Thanks, Gus. Thanks, everyone. I'll mute my line.
Appreciate that, Ivy. Ma'am, your volume is a little low. If you could speak up. It's still pretty low. Still pretty low. It was high before. I don't know what happened to bring it back down, but it's like whisper low.
Yeah, they were messing with my internet service, so I had to interrupt right now.
Okay, can't hear you. And I did hear they've been messing with internet service, and then it dropped even lower. If you can get it corrected quickly in the last few minutes, if you want to get your response in to Ivy on this broadcast. If not, we can do it for the compensatory call-in. Did we have any folks that we missed completely? Just making sure we didn't miss anyone altogether. Okay, no one we missed altogether. If any of the folks that are with us, if folks wanted to comment or if they had a situation of their own that they wanted to touch on. I know we had the caller, our female caller, who asked the question of any of the black males that are with us. But if anybody had any other thoughts they wanted to share before we wrap up, do so now.
Ooh, I'll wait.
Go ahead, Emmy.
I'll be real quick. I'm not a man, not a male, but I do think that I give this consideration when I am working with or dealing with non-white males, specifically black males, and all that means to be only a male or a boy and not a man, and how sensitive that can be, and all of that when it comes to how males conceptualize themselves and whatnot. And so I personally try to have a lot of patience, because as not being a male, I don't really have that kind of feeling of like something, my manhood and I'm a man and all that kind of stuff. But I do realize that that's a very real experience for the non-white black male. So I try to have like a lot of patience. While you were speaking, I had thought email before you told me he sent the email. So the only thing that I would do is just make sure that you're documenting things, and that, I don't know if you can establish any type of like peace with them, but if you're more codified, sometimes those of us who are a little bit more aware or have an ability to understand things get to be the more mature or more responsible or caring for those who don't, because they're just over there flapping in the wind, dealing with all of those emotions, because they really are just terribly confused with no code, no light, nothing to really help them understand what's going on. So there's just a bunch of confusion, breeding more confusion. But that's just a suggestion. I totally understand if you choose to not do that, but that's how I go. Like, even with the black male that I work with as a pharmacist, I try to give him as much of whatever I can. It's a different environment, different situation, but I feel you, but maybe just a little understanding or whatnot might help. But thank you all for listening.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Emmy. Draftomania, did you want to try it one more time?
Okay, can you hear me better now? I'm quite sure you can.
Much better.
Okay. As far as Ivy, thank you so much for your sentiments. And the funny thing about it is when I leave, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So they're being bold about it. It's like in broad daylight. You know what I mean? But I'm the only one on that side of the curve. So people are coming. So it is during the daytime. So, but the only thing when I go in at night, and it is kind of like a wooded area. So I mean, I would hate to run into this individual at night when I'm getting off the bus, and then something should happen. So I'm not sure if I can get somebody to catch me on the way out. But this guy is doing it in the morning time when I get off in the morning. So, I mean, I would suspect if anything happened that somebody would see something, but I'm just going to make people aware, let my take the suggestions that was given to me by Gus and the rest of the callers. And thank you.
Indeed.
You're welcome, and I wish you all the best. Go ahead.
No, thanks.
Not a problem. The male callers that spoke up simultaneously, did you want to go?
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Peace, greetings to you, Gus, and all the listeners. I'm just grateful for the forum that you all provide. But being a non-white black male, I wanted to. So I kind of had a similar experience actually during my time. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In response to the previous caller dealing with the situations with the non-white male at the office that was invading her space and micromanaging. I just completed some military time in the Army, and without going into too much detail, that is just an exercise in white supremacy exacted on victims by victims and people who classify themselves as white. But I would say my advice would be what the previous caller actually already brought up, which was trying to utilize some patience and stay codified. But the thing is, though, a lot of people, like I dealt with a situation where there was a victim as well, but a victim that was in his, I want to say, early 50s in the military, that was an extremely aggressive micromanager, and it had more to do with his mentality as well as his rank, if you will. But the thing is, you could see it was basically it was real victimization going on, and he couldn't see that he was a victim. So, I mean, wow, I lost my train of thought, but my point is, I would say, I just want to basically chime in on what the previous caller said, that I agree with her advice, which was, trying to utilize some patience, but also staying codified, because, I mean, some of this behavior is just inappropriate. I mean, there's no reason for that victim to have acted the way in which he acted, in my opinion. So I thank you, Gus. I thank you, listeners. And first-time caller, thank you all. And I mute my line.
Thank you. Oh, well, quick question for you. You're saying that who was exercising white supremacy? You said it was exercising.
Like I'm saying from my previous military experience, it was white supremacy being in the system that we're living under. I'm saying the victims were also taking part in it, and I'm saying maybe they were unwilling or willing, but knowing what I know now about certain things and looking back on things that went on and still go on from people that I know, it's just amazing to me that, I mean, just the behaviors and the actions that are condoned in our military. So just to be clear, in our military. So it's confusion. It's confusion.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your insight.
I mute my line.
Do we have any other callers who had a comment, question they wanted to get in before we conclude?
I did. I wanted to say to
Stacy in the UK.
I'll be very quick. I just wanted to ask if she felt that what's driving his behaviour is that he feels that his job is at risk, and if you think your director is somehow manipulating the both of you. I'll make my line.
No, his job is completely different. So what happened was people that are producing these different videos, it's an additional like task that's assigned to everyone on the team. So everyone's done one on top of their regular job. But he does have a background in broadcast, and he used to do it before. So it may have been a whole thing of like, I know how to do this, and I don't know. Everyone likes it. It's fun, and they don't get to do it as their regular job, and that's my full-time role there. That's another thing possibly.
Okay. Was there another caller who spoke up? Last question or comment that they were going to get in?
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Gus. That was me. I just wanted to say to Thomas in New York that what may help is me trying to sue at your job because it's you're being terrorized and harassed and no one's doing anything about it. And so maybe you could look into legal action for that. And I wish you all the best, and I wish all the codified software developer the best as well. I'll mute my line. Thanks, Gus.
Appreciate that, Ivy. I think Thomas in New York works with attorneys, like a whole building full of legal folks, unless I'm in air, or accountants, one of the two. Close enough. We will be here tomorrow. Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison, study session number 4. Man, oh man, I'm super enjoying reading the book. It is amazing. Top 5 all time. We are still very early in the text, so if you have not, been following what have you, you can easily catch up in the archives. We haven't gotten very far at all. I think we're on chapter 6 for tomorrow. Man, oh man. Ralph Ellison, the genius, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll be here on Saturday for the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Again, C.O.W.S t-shirts. Please treat me like I am a white person. C.O.W.S shirt at gmail.com. C-O-W-S, all capital letters, shirt at gmail.com. Much obliged to all the folks for participating. Stacy in the UK hanging out with us until the finish line. 4 a.m. Friday morning, London time. Her and the royal wedding, and she made it through all of that and still came in to participate for the duration. What do you want to give a parting shot on the royal wedding? You weren't with us for the Global Sunday Talk. Parting shot, royal wedding. You were at ground zero and survived.
Oh, I certainly didn't watch that. Oh, come on. That's my parting shot.
That's the parting shot. Right on. I hope it was worthy of your time and energy, all the folks for participating, whether you listened or were able to chime in or wrote in. Thanks for the folks who wrote in as well. Again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. Racists have terrorized a lot of black people because we were not thinking clearly because of their poisons and narcotics. I know Dr. Welsing would super co-sign on yes. Let us take excellent care of our brain computers, our health, so that we can think clearly and crank out new concepts, solutions to permanently solve the problem. Racist man, racist woman, racist child. Certainly, if we're going to be out and about in a vehicle, enjoying the weather and what have you, we want to be sober and buckled up. Let's do everything we possibly can to minimize contact with race soldiers. No playing on the phone while we are behind the wheel either. They do a lot of aggressive ticketing for that sort of thing in these parts about that phone as well. That said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Even my conditioning has been conditioned.